Wednesday, my dude.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Punch Up Pod with Lila and Pat. Happy Wednesday, my dudes. Pat, how are you?
I am wonderful. I'm so happy we got Kshama Sawant on again, and we won't waste time with my little daily matters on today's show.
That sounds good, because honestly, none of us really cares about it. No, I'm kidding. I'm totally joking. We care. We love you. Just a reminder, please do make sure to like, subscribe, smash that notification bell, as the kids like to say. Yes, we are so excited. And while I know she needs no introduction truly to our audience, for any new viewers, former city council member, Socialist Kshama Sawant led movements to win historic victories, including the highest minimum wage of any major city in the country, the Amazon tax to fund affordable housing, a slew of landmark renters' rights laws, the nation's strongest resolution against the genocide in Gaza, and much more. She is now running to unseat AIPAC-funded Democrat Adam Smith in Washington's 9th Congressional District. We are so thrilled to welcome once again Kshama Sawant. Hello.
Thank you so much for having me, Lila and Pat.
We are thrilled. Well, let's get right to it because we're running out of time. August 4th is your primary. You are running against Adam Smith. Why don't you please tell us why you feel like this was the fight you wanted to take on now?
First of all, just zooming up above the race itself, we are in a national emergency. It's a national and international emergency. We have a genocide in Gaza that is now expanding to the West Bank. We are having war after war, forever wars under US imperialism. We're having people in Yemen and Iraq and Iran and Lebanon being slaughtered. And then in the United States, you have the richest country in the history of humanity, and half of American households can't afford to buy groceries. The situation with rents skyrocketing, healthcare being in shambles, infrastructure in dire straits. Life is hard for the vast majority of ordinary people in America. And at the same time, we have the statistic that the top 1% internationally under global capitalism have made $55 trillion worth of wealth. This situation is absolutely an emergency, and we need and urgently need a class struggle-based fight back. And unfortunately, that's not happening through most of the labor leadership being what I call business unionist, meaning being at peace with capitalism. And the logic of that is to be at peace and be in alliance with the parties of capitalism, the Democratic and Republican parties, and not really offering any avenues of fight back. And so what we need the most desperately, Lila and Pat, is breakthroughs for the working class that can become the avenues of massive explosions of struggle. And that is why we believe that it is really, really urgent to elect a fighter to the US Congress. And in this race, it is extremely crucial that we're running in this race because Adam Smith is not, he's obviously your Democratic warmonger guy who has voted for the genocide in Gaza, voted to ban United Nations food assistance to Gaza at a time when there have been reports of catastrophic levels of mass starvation. All of that is true. He's one of the worst Democrats, but it's beyond that. He is a general among the warmongers. He is the ranking member in the House Armed Services Committee. And in December, alongside his Republican counterpart, who's the chair of the House Armed Services Committee, Mike Rogers, Adam Smith co-sponsored a bill. Keep in mind, he's not just a bystander. He co-sponsored a bill for $906 new billion for Trump's wars. That's the money Trump is using for the war on Iran. So the war on Iran is bipartisan war. And on top of that, just last June, Adam Smith put forward another bill, co-sponsored another bill along with Mike Rogers to fund $1 trillion new for war a massive escalation in weaponry for Israel and fusing the US and Israeli military. So you can see that if we can defeat Adam Smith, that will not only defeat Adam Smith per se and throw him out of office, which is the least price he can pay. He has blood on his hands of millions of people. He should really be held on trial for war crimes. But it's not only about defeating Adam Smith. It's about sending a powerful message to the capitalist class that they can, and to the working class, empowering message to the working class that you can actually take down one of the principal instigators of imperialist war, and that is worth fighting for.
Amen. Absolutely. And I think one of the things that is so inspiring about your theory and what you've put into practice to win so many fights against this, the duopoly and capitalism, is we're always told we just need one more Democrat. We need two more. Oh, now it's Joe Manchin, and it's, there's always an excuse. And so that vote blue no matter who, we just have to, we could really turn it around and have a Democratic Congress. And what difference does it make when every time, even with a supermajority, Obama gave us a Heritage Foundation health plan, right? So your way of doing things doesn't rely on you having 49 or 50 extra socialists with you in Congress. Can you explain to people how, as the sole socialist in Congress, you have your path to winning victories for the working class and against genocide?
Yeah, so just to take the example of the minimum wage victory that you mentioned, Laila, that we won the nation's highest minimum wage. The minimum wage in Seattle is $21.30 an hour. And that came from the victory we won in 2014 of the $15 minimum wage, which we making Seattle the first major city to win that. And the way we won it was in the context of, as you correctly said, me being one independent socialist on the city council and all the other politicians being Democrats. Seattle is a left-leaning city. There's no Republican stronghold here. Every council member here is a Democrat, except for me. I was one aberration. I was the first socialist elected in over 100 years. And now, right, I was on the Seattle City Council for 10 years, and now it's all Democrats. So the way we won was by using my office as a vehicle to build mass movements of working class people. I mean, it defies the conventional logic. The conventional logic of politics under capitalism is that you have to win over the other politicians and you have to make coalitions with them and so on, have backroom deals with them, have private conversations with them, and generally be at peace with them. In other words, all of that is, if you are entering any city council or Congress, any elected body, in order to make your own career. And if you want to make your own career, your best bet is to go along to get along, not rock the boat, and generally be there to administer the capitalist state. And maybe you can give more left-leaning speeches a little bit. You can maybe have a different rhetoric. That's not what I got elected for. That's not what I ran for office for. I did not run for office to make a career for myself. I ran for office because we, my fellow socialists and I, we wanted to win an elected office in order to be able to use it as a vehicle for mass movements. And I did not go into City Hall thinking I'm going to administer or help administer the capitalist state. I went there to disrupt the capitalist state. And that is very, very crucial. That's a fundamental difference. If you're going to fight for and win something for the working class, you have to understand that the only way to do it is to be is to sort of have an analysis of capitalism, that capitalism at its very core, the status quo under capitalism, is class warfare, relentless class warfare against the working class, billions of people suffering on the planet. And so the only way to win something is for us to go to class war back against the capitalist class. So there is no peaceful, non-antagonistic route to do this. Capitalism is fundamentally class antagonisms. So either you will have elected leaders who will accept that conflict and be at peace with the powers that be, or you will have someone like me, and unfortunately it's too rare, where you understand that, yes, if you're going to actually be successful in winning something for working class people, then you will have a target on your back from the political establishment, from the Democratic Party, from the billionaires and multimillionaires. And so that was the framework through which we entered City Hall. And that was what guided us every step of the way. So the way we won $15 an hour was not by worrying about, oh, can I morally persuade this or that Democrat? Can I sweet talk them behind the scenes? Absolutely not. What I did was turn my office outward, launched the 15 Now campaign soon after I was elected, and then started to mobilize, organize the rank and file of the working class in Seattle, and brought pressure to bear not only on the Democrats, Lila and Pat, it's also the labor leaders that needed pressure on them because they didn't want to fight for $15 an hour. Many of them. I mean, some of them were with us, but there were exceptions to the rule. And so it was the rank and file mobilization of the working class that scared the Democrats and forced them to vote yes. So from on day one, when reporters asked me when I took office, reporters used to ask me, how many votes do you have for $15 an hour? How many votes do you have? It's all about this electoral calculus of votes. And I was honest with them. I said, today, if the vote was held, it would have one vote, mine, and all the Democrats would vote no. Less than 6 months since that, we won the $15 minimum wage, and we won a unanimous vote. We forced every single one of those Democrats to vote yes on 15. We carried out pitch battle against them and the ruling class to win inflation increases in that wage also. And that is why Seattle's minimum wage is $21.30 an hour. I'll just offer up as a point of comparison, the national minimum wage is still at a disgraceful $7.25 an hour. The minimum wage for tipped workers is $2.13 an hour. I think that therein lies the evidence that a fighting strategy, a class struggle-based fight back, is what delivers the goods. All of this coalition building and all of this that the so-called progressive Democrats do, none of that has won any victories for the working class.
Not a single one. We have not had a national minimum wage increase since it was passed under George W. Bush. So Obama, the great hope and change with his supermajority, gave us the Republican healthcare plan from Heritage and no increase in minimum wage. So when you say people have to be scared, because I know, we're all for that. I just got a safety sensitive issue warning on my guillotine post recently. But when you say that for people who are, that the language, the militant language, the class war is always brought up when it's the working class finally fighting back, as opposed to, no, we're all being subjected to class war through all of this. It's just like talking about the right for Hamas, Hezbollah to fight their occupiers with armed resistance. It's always when you fight back against the most powerful empires that you're called, angry and a terrorist and all of that. How do you respond? Or do you feel like when you speak to people on the ground, they are with you? I mean, I feel like everybody's so angry now that probably everybody's with you, but do you ever have any tension with the people you actually do want on your side, not regular Democrats who are in office?
I think it's both. I mean, many people, as you correctly said, Laila, at this point actually are understanding and concluding that nothing short of a fight back is going to work. And in fact, I would say just the statistically, the polls are indicating clearly that if there's anything that's frustrating tens of millions of working people, especially young people, it is the fact that the Democratic Party politicians refuse to fight Trump and the right wing. And in fact, there's been no real action, nothing effective against ICE terror. There's been no stopping of the genocide. There's been no addressing of the cost of living crisis. We could have had so much in terms of healthcare, minimum wage increases, job creation. None of that has actually happened. And so in reality, I would say, if anything, Laila, there's a danger of people who bring themselves forward as potential leaders. There's a danger of underestimating how much anger is roiling among the masses of the working class. And look at the numbers of people who came out to the No Kings protests. 5 million, 9 million. I mean, these are shocking numbers. These are revolutionary size numbers. In other words, they have become each of those No Kings became the single largest day of protests in US history. But what came out of it? People are out there saying, we want to fight back. And the Democratic Party, most of the labor leadership, that is the business unionist labor leadership, NGO leaders, all of them are an obstacle to any social struggle happening. So really, I would contend. I mean, I'm not claiming that that consciousness is homogeneous. Obviously, there are people, working class people, who may not agree immediately about the confrontational strategy, but we show them through example that this is what needs to be done, and we explain to them that here's the deal. If we don't do it this way, then we won't be able to win. Look at the evidence. So we believe in very respectful and patient dialogue with people who don't start out agreeing with us, because you're not going to build a movement in an echo chamber. But my point is that that is not the biggest that's not the biggest feature of politics in America today. The most dominant feature of politics in America today is millions of people just ready to fight, and the chasm between that and the leadership that's on offer. The main feature is the chasm between the mass desire to fight back and the leadership that's on offer, and that's where our focus needs to be.
Yeah, I would say that your rank and file Democrats they're waking up for their learned helplessness, right? So it's no longer convincing these politicians that are Democrats to support what we support. It's that we know you're not going to do it. The Democrats are not going to do it. So we need somebody else. And so we've effectively won the battle of ideas, largely, is how I look at it now. So now we need to put it into action. The praxis is electing you. The praxis is disrupting capital in every way possible, not agreeing just to marginally get a benefit of 2% in an area.
And in fact, that's also borne out, what you were saying, Pat, in our experience of canvassing. Our campaign has had hundreds of people canvassing throughout the district. By now, we have spoken to tens of thousands of people. I've personally spoken to thousands of people. We've had town halls in every part of the district, and on various issues, on the demands that we're running on, like ending all military aid to Israel, for an permanent arms embargo to Israel, for free healthcare for all funded by taxing the rich, to shut down ICE and the detention centers, to stop the data centers and the AI-related mass layoffs. We've had town halls everywhere on these issues, and we've talked to, as I said, tens of thousands of people. And our experience has been that often, especially young people, they won't stop and talk to us until they find out that I'm not a Democrat or Republican, and that I actually have a whole record of beating the billionaires and never selling out. Because people are so sick and tired of the sellout. They're like, and there are so many young people who say, if she's a Democrat, don't even talk to me. So we have to tell them, no, she's not a Democrat. She's an independent. And so that's the consciousness. But these are the people who need to be empowered. There's millions, I would say tens of millions of people who are angry, and this includes also working people who voted for Trump. Lots of working class people are realizing that Trump was, the left was right. Trump is a con man. He's a billionaire, multi-billionaire con man. He is no more on the side of working class people than any other billionaire is. But the reality is that neither the Democratic nor the Republican Party is working for us, and we need a real fight back. And I really agree with Pat that actually we are in such an incredible moment in US history, because since the formation of the State of Israel, which itself is in service of the capitalist interests of capitalism, the Israeli state itself, the creation of the state is a project of capitalist and imperialist interests. But since that happened nearly 80 years ago, for the first time in US history, you have a majority of people against Israel, and an even bigger majority against the genocide, and a majority really agreeing with the need to end military aid to Israel. And so really, I would say that the shortage here is not of people who are drawing the correct conclusions, the masses, and wanting to fight. The shortage here is of real leadership. And you referenced the learned helplessness that you were mentioning, Pat. I mean, really, that is in reality, it is a strategy that capitalism develops, where capitalism is a malleable system, and when it sees when the capitalist class, it's not an inanimate object. These are individuals. These are billionaires, multimillionaires who are extremely powerful, and they recognize that actually, because people are angry, you need some sort of release valve for them, and so then they allow begrudgingly allow some so-called progressives in one of the two parties of the ruling class. But what is the actual role of these progressives? I just wanted to offer one example. Look at Medicare for all. Hugely popular idea. Universal public health care is hugely popular across the board, no matter whom people voted for, like red states, blue states, purple states, everywhere. If there was any Congress member who woke up tomorrow and said, I'm going to dedicate my whole term to winning Medicare for all, that would be, that person would become an overnight hero. But what do you have actually? You don't have anything close to that. What you have is 2 decades of these so-called progressive Democrats putting forward the Medicare for all bill 13 times, formally putting forward, having press conferences and all of that, all this pomp and circumstance. But not once has any of these Democrats brought it to a vote. And that therein lies the problem. And that is a core part of what I call class struggle based fighting strategy, is that one of the building blocks of how we were able to win unparalleled victories in Seattle with my one lone office is because we had a leadership, through me and my fellow leaders in Socialists, who understood the core importance of bringing, of exposing the politicians who are actually spokespeople of capitalism but get to deceive working class people by speaking both sides of their mouth, exposing them to the light of day. And that is important. And this refers to also what you were saying earlier, Laila, that people have to be scared, meaning the politicians who represent the capitalist class have to be scared. And what I mean by that is, just to give you a concrete example, when we were fighting for the $15 an hour, and this goes for everything, when we were fighting for renters' rights, when we were fighting for the Amazon tax, you take your pick, it's across the board. What I am explaining is true, is that the Democrats, they're not going to say, most of them anyways, there might be some who are nakedly honest and say, well, I'm a representative of billionaires and I don't like these progressive policies. But for the most part, that's not what is the barrier, because then it's clear which side they're on. They're being, in that sense, they're being honest. Right. But the biggest barrier is when you have a whole parade of so-called progressive Democrats who will say, well, I don't think this is the right time. We need a subcommittee to discuss this. Of course, I'm on the side of workers, but look, we have to be careful. We can't affect small businesses. We can't have a detrimental impact on small businesses. I mean, they will repeat all these lies, even though the data shows, and I can tell you as myself as an economist, that there is zero data to show that minimum wage increases have any detrimental impact on small businesses. What affects small businesses is the fact that it's capitalism and it favors multinational corporations. That's at the root of everything. But the point is that they will repeat utter falsehoods, but they will appear as if they're sympathetic to the issue of higher minimum wage or the Amazon tax. This is just not the right time. This is just not the right way. Or they will personalize it. In my case, they would personally carry out character assassination, saying, I agree with the policy, but I don't appreciate Councilmember Sawant's approach to this. She didn't come and talk to me. She didn't do this and she didn't do that. All of this is cover for their actual agenda, which is they will represent the interest of the Chamber of Commerce and they will oppose this. But there's a caveat here. As long as they get to appear progressive. Right. So in other words, as long as you as a working class leader allow them to keep their progressive reputation intact while at the same time being an enemy of progressive causes and the working class, as long as you allow them that, they will get away with it. And that is why a core part of our Marxist approach, our class struggle approach, is to specifically expose those politicians and put a political price tag on their individual careers by saying, Councilmember so-and-so, you are actually anti-worker. Shame on you. This is how I spoke from the dais. Shame on you for bringing forward an amendment to eliminate inflation increases, because you represent the Chamber of Commerce. What you're doing is going to be just devastating for the poorest workers of our city. You act like you're on the side of Black people, but Black workers are the ones who are disproportionately affected by very low minimum wages. So you are actually anti-Black workers. That is the kind of these are not incidental words. These are not words because I'm mean or I'm just not nice. There's no such thing. This is class warfare, and it is my political and moral responsibility to call them out, because that is what puts a political price tag on their careers. And that individual politician then has to decide, am I going to vote against the working class and then have a really damaging impact on my own reputation, or am I just going to vote yes and tell big business interests behind the scenes like, look, I can't support you guys? That is the choice you have to give them. You have to create a compulsion for them. That is the only way you can win, because these people are not on your side. The Democratic Party is a party of billionaires. The Democratic and Republican parties are the two most powerful parties of global capitalism. I'll just end by giving one other example where, we won such a whole host of renters' rights. Not only did we won offensive victories, we prevented the corporate landlord lobby from winning anything. So the main lobbyist for the corporate landlords, he while I was in City Hall for a decade, he admitted publicly after he retired that while I was in office, the corporate landlords simply could not win. And what he said was that privately, the Democratic Council members will tell him all the right things by his measure, meaning right things for corporate landlords, anti-working class renters. But then they go into chambers and they face, and this part is a quote from him, they face Sawant's army. And then everything goes south. That is what it took us to win, because it created that clash where every single politician had to evaluate, am I going to take this massive price on my own political career, or am I just going to get it over with? Yeah, let's vote yes, but that's not going to make the corporate landlords happy, but I don't have a choice. That is what you do. That's going to class warfare back.
Yeah.
Amen. And don't you think that now Israel is an opportunity? I mean, obviously we agree as progressives, but it's such a clear litmus test of the politicians not supporting the will of the voters in face of the damage it does to their own electability.
Yes, I think that's a very important question actually to examine. So I think first of all, yes, it is creating an electability issue. We just saw these phenomenal shifts that happened where in the Democratic primaries in New York and in Colorado, you saw candidates who had a strong position against the Israeli state defeating longtime establishment stalwarts like Israel, pro-Israel Zionist stalwarts like Adriano Espaillat in New York and Diana DeGette in Colorado. They were vanquished. I mean, Diana DeGette has been in Congress for 29 years, the same length of time that Adam Smith, my main opponent, has been in office as well. And these were seemingly invincible Congress members, and they were taken out. And Israel was a principal issue there. So yes, it has become an electability issue. But I think at the same time, we have to understand that that is just the beginning of the fight. Now, once these Congress members take office and go to Congress, that is where the real test begins, because the existence of the state of Israel, and it is an apartheid state. The existence of Israel itself is the existence of apartheid. There's no other existence of Israel. The Israeli state was formed in order to create a garrison state, a fortress state for capitalist interests in a region that is geopolitically critical for the state of Hormuz and all those reasons, and also is extremely oil rich. So for geopolitical reasons and wealth reasons, all of these all of them go together. They don't exist by themselves. For all of these reasons, that region is of super importance to the global capitalist class. And I'm specifically saying global because it's not just American billionaires and multimillionaires who are profiting from all of that. It's also Saudi billionaires and millionaires. It's Jordanian and Egyptian and Indian, from my home country, so it's the overall capitalist class for which the existence of the Israeli state and the role that the Israeli state plays is crucial for them. So it's important to have this analysis, because without that, we cannot understand how is it that these politicians, even though they are facing this massive crisis of, the opposition, where the majority of America has now turned against them, and they are still funding the genocide. The only way you can explain that is by understanding that the role that the Israeli state plays in that region is one of keeping working class rebellion at bay. And that is where the genocide and the apartheid and the occupation, and the huge horrors that have been perpetrated on the Palestinian people, none of that can be understood unless you have that class analysis of why it is happening in the first place. And because of that, the American, the Democratic and Republican parties, which represent the interests of capitalism, they are not just easily going to let go. And here's why. Because if there is any actual victory in relation to Israel, like if we end the genocide, if we enact a permanent arms embargo, as I'm calling for, or even a temporary arms embargo, even if we win some other victories, if we end all military aid, as I am calling for also, if the working class were to win any such victory, it would be a defeat for the capitalist class of gigantic proportions, because not only will it create just unprecedented upheaval for the working class in that entire region, and I'm including Egypt in my calculus as well, because the Egyptian working class is the biggest component of what can move into the forces that can move into struggle against capitalism in that region. If you don't include the Egyptian working class, it's very difficult to see how there will be any rebellion. So the whole region, the working class in that whole region, you cannot even imagine how incredibly historically empowering it would be for the people there. And it would also send a message to the working class internationally. If you can force a defeat on the capitalist class on an issue as integral to their power as the Middle East, then you can defeat them on anything. And so, and I'm not saying this to say it's not possible to do that. It is absolutely possible to do that. The Russian Revolution happened. Capitalism was overthrown in Russia. So that can happen. And that is why I'm a revolutionary socialist, because I have that hope. My point is to look at what it will take to make that happen. So because that much is at stake for the capitalist class, we should expect the fight back that we will need to engage in to be that much uphill. So that is why you are seeing a situation playing out where, even though the public opinion has turned so decisively against Israel, you will still see the Democratic and Republican parties being entrenched in those interests, because it is a conundrum for them. Because if they give it up, then it will send a massive uproar among the working class. There's no stopping. It's contagious. Victories are contagious, right. and this will be a victory of such epic proportions that the message will be proportionately that much more earth-shattering throughout the world, for the working class throughout the world. And that is why we will need an all-out revolutionary fight back in order to achieve this. And in my view, the first step would be to elect the first revolutionary socialist to the U.S. Congress.
Well, here. Yeah, one of the things that is unfortunate that we saw exhibited in just the most humiliating way was that for Kamala Harris and the Democratic establishment, their success wasn't actually predicated on her winning office. They would rather lose to Trump than win with an anti-genocide, pro-Palestine, pro-worker message. And, that when it's like they refuse to play the game because she's going to be well taken care of no matter what. And so I think a little bit, it takes some of the power away if she's fine losing, or if somebody is fine losing. It's when they are in office and you force something to be put up so they have to be on record publicly on how they stand, and then it can be taken away from them. But the power of capital and the greed of most of the people who are in political office, the only thing I think that will actually resonate with them, as you say, is the fear of the working class. Like, we are coming for them. And that's why they're building migrant cages for all of us.
I think the public realizes how all these projects are one project. Like, it is a capitalist project. And that's why you've got AI and data centers infused with Israel and with the genocide. And it's, and then those same companies like, Palantir, they're getting government contracts in other areas. They're denying Medicare claims now. But then, we're seeing on a local level all these small victories of data centers getting ripped from communities, and we are getting some wins. So I think there is a wind behind our sails in this area, especially for someone running not as a Democrat.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you both mentioned the question of the local fights and the data centers. In fact, Workers Strike Back, the organization I helped co-found, we have our members in cities across the nation, and we were able to be part of such exciting fight back as well in a small city called Pine Hill in Minnesota and a city called Pekin in Illinois, where these cities are examples where there was a fight against data centers. And we I'm not claiming that we started that fight. It was started by the residents of those cities, and they built that fight. But Workers Strike Back had the honor of being part of that fight and providing some strategy and tactical guidance. And we carried out the fight, especially in Pekin, where the Pekin City Council had, the Republicans and Democrats, they had their hearings, and we brought a real fighting edge to those hearings, and they were forced to back off. So yes, we are seeing many of these local victories, and it is very, very crucial. The fight against AI and the data centers is going to be absolutely central to the coming months in many ways. For one, as Pat, you were alluding to, AI is now in many ways the common denominator. ICE terror, the jobs crisis and the layoffs, the war and genocide, all of it, and the loss of jobs and the exploitation of workers in the film and writing industry, all of that. All of those are connected by the fact that AI is the new frontier for profit making for the billionaires and multimillionaires. That's the reason it's happening. It's not because they are some great purveyors of technological innovation. No, that's not what it is. Because if you look at the state of the world under capitalism, there are billions of people today in the 21st century, billions of people on the planet who don't have access to a simple 100-year-old technology of washing machines. Why? Because it's not in the interest of the capitalist class to provide basic technology that will improve lives and eliminate drudgery, especially for billions of women. And so what they're doing with AI is not because they're such great technological innovators. No, it's because capitalism is a system in crisis globally, and AI offers a new way where they can extract more profits from a really, really sick and just ridiculously horrendous system at a time of us being on the precipice of climate catastrophe. People are angry, all of this, and that's what they're doing. They're busy extracting their, another million, another $1 trillion for themselves. It is a completely nonsensical system. It's an absurd system, and it is a brutal system. And so the question of AI and data centers actually connects with the question of capitalism itself. And like one of the things we are calling for in our campaign is to take data centers into democratic public ownership of workers, for the simple reason that you can't control what you don't own. And here's where, I wanted to just sort of juxtapose what we have won as workers and where we need to go, because it's the victories against the data centers in many local towns and cities has been tremendous, because it shows you that people can be won over to a fight back. And what's remarkable about these fights is that a lot of these people, you watch these town halls where they grill the Congress members and city council members, is a lot of these people probably are getting politicized for the first time. They are not political activists. Yep. But this crisis is at their doorstep, and they're willing to get organized and fight back. Yep. And they have the strategy to win. So that's what's heartening about all of this. And at the same time, when you look at the statistics, you will see that it is a tiny proportion of the data centers that have been planned for the United States. And also keeping in mind that the billionaires and multimillionaires have so much money that they will wait us out. They will wait out each struggle, and they'll keep coming back and keep coming back. And so what I'm saying is that we need a strategy that goes beyond these individual fights, and we need a nationwide mass movement, militant movement to fight to take the data centers into democratic public ownership and stop them, stop the data centers from invading our neighborhoods, because it's, because really the expansion of AI has very much to do with surveillance state, ICE terror, and war and genocide, and we want none of that. We want a public sector living wage jobs guarantee funded by taxing the rich, which is something that we're calling for. So, but to win any of this, we will need the kind of militant fight back that we had in, for example, the 1934 general strike in Minneapolis, which the Teamster strike, which was led by Marxists like myself at that time. And that combined with the auto sit-down strikes in the Midwest, all of these in the Rust Belt, all of these strike actions, general strike actions and the sit-down strikes, those were what created a revolutionary moment in US history, where FDR was not the benefactor of the working class, but it forced him to go to the capitalist class and tell them that I'm your best friend, you need to agree to the New Deal, because otherwise the pitchforks are coming. In other words, it was the threat of revolution against capitalism that won us the New Deal. So we have to learn these lessons from history and understand that unless we create that threat, we are not going to win against the data centers. We're not going to end the genocide. We're not going to win an arms embargo against Israel. But obviously, we can't just create a threat. We have to actually have revolutionary movements and overthrow capitalism itself and replace it with a socialist world.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing to see how much advertising and propaganda AI has to do for itself. Watching it through like the All-Star game yesterday, and they make it seem like this is how we find our humanity, and then it was for AI. It's ridiculous. But, I also think, like, what other country has to do so much propaganda for itself other than Israel? So that should be a real indication to everybody that, if the public isn't just sort of thirsty for it on its own, and the public hates AI, I mean, it's massively unpopular because they know it's meant to replace us,
right,
if it's at its best. If it works the way they want it to work, it replaces us. They take all the profit and all of our electricity and water and clean air and jet off, right?
Yeah, and it's most unpopular with young people. Since when has a technology ever come up that's new and young people are the most against it? Because they have the least stake in how our government works these days. I mean, at least the lowest voice. Like, they without joining a protest and movement and disrupting, like voting, they know is just not doing it. Like, you're telling me one of the Democrat who supports AI, who also agrees with the Republicans that it's an arms race to unemploy all of America the fastest. Like, that's in my interest. No.
And meanwhile, China, that's so much bigger than we are, has a fraction of the data centers at a fraction of the cost.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, in fact, the statistics are actually pretty devastating. The vast majority of data centers are being built in the US, and so it's all in service. I mean, it is unadulterated service of profits for a few. It is nothing to do with technological innovation. It has nothing to do with human needs. In fact, it is the exact opposite. It is absolutely destructive to the environment. It is upending people's lives just in the neighborhoods. You see, watch these documentaries where their water from the kitchen faucet is slowing down to a trickle, or it's coming out all sludge, muddy. Yeah. There's smell, there's noise. I mean, the noise is so loud. It's actually a health hazard.
Yeah, it is. And also there's some areas where they're sort of like have daylight almost 24 hours a day because of the strange lights that are emanating. And, the people in power don't care. The first thing that Jeffries did when Trump won was jettison off to Silicon Valley to make sure he got all of those tech billionaires back. But just that reminds me that because 2016 is on a doomsday loop, Carville just came out and said that it was Bernie who, because he didn't support Hillary enough at the beginning, that's why we got Trump #1. And now I think there are some people coming out. I've seen these accusations against Abdul El-Sayed in Michigan, and now against you as well, that you helped Trump win his second, throne of power in 2024. Did you want to respond to that? Is that coming from the Harris camp herself, or like from their camp, or who are lobbying these accusations against you that you were somehow instrumental in Kamala Harris's loss and Trump's victory?
Yeah, it's definitely coming from the vote blue, no matter who crowd, the Kamala Harris type of crowd. But it's also coming from sections of the left establishment, as Brianna Joy Gray calls them. And I think that's a useful terminology, because there is a whole section of the what I think wanted to be considered as left who are very much threatened by the fact that I'm running as independent, and also have seen what I've done in Seattle through my decade on the Seattle City Council, that I'm not there to give cover to the Democratic Party.
Right.
I am not going to, I have no plans of selling out. I have no plans to do what AOC did, which is try to square a circle where, she started out by having a sit down occupation of Nancy Pelosi's office with the Sunrise Movement, which I was celebrating when she did that. Yeah. But then she went from there to calling Nancy Pelosi Mama Bear and making peace with them, and also voting for the Iron Dome and voting for the voting to break the railroad workers' strike. I mean, every Democrat, obviously including my opponent Adam Smith, but every Democrat except for Rashida Tlaib in the House voted to break the railroad workers' strike, and that should be enough. No working class vote goes to any strike breaker. So there is a real there is an understanding among this left establishment that if somebody like me was in Congress, it would not only expose the Republicans and the corporate Democrats, it would also expose what's really keeping struggle from happening, which is the gatekeeping by many of the people who should be on our side but are having this idea where they don't actually want to go to battle against the establishment. I mean, there was a moment of honesty where AOC herself said, people were asking her, why don't you oppose the establishment? And she said, and this was specifically in relation to, why don't you bring universal public health care for a vote and use your numerical leverage of the squad members to win something? And she said, and this is what I think is I don't agree with her, but it's an honest assessment, that if she did that, there would be reputational and relational harm to herself. In other words, that captures the whole problem, which is that if you run as a careerist, and if you think that somehow you have to have a career, you have to keep getting reelected, and you have to keep peace with other people in Congress because otherwise they'll make your life hard, then that is where, despite all good intentions, you're going to end up selling out, because what it takes to win for working people is to go to war against the Democrats. So they're not your colleagues. You don't sit in the cloakroom and chat with them. I mean, if they're willing to chat with you, fine, but that should not be your goal. Your goal should not be, they're so harsh to me behind the scenes, that's why I have to give in. No, the Democrats were absolutely vile to me, both behind the scenes and in front of the public eye. They were absolutely vile to me. But you cannot make it personal. You cannot. You have to actually wear all of that as a badge of honor and understand that that's the process of the system trying to break you down and sell out working class people in order to make your own life comfortable. That comes with the territory. And so no, we absolutely don't agree with that approach. And in fact, we in 2024, Workers Strike Back and we campaigned against both Trump and Harris, and it's a really false allegation against me that I campaigned for Trump. I absolutely did not campaign for Trump. Our slogan was no votes for genocide, no Trump, no Harris. That was our slogan, because neither of those candidates had put any position forward against the wars and the genocide. And I think all of the statistical evidence that has come out since then has completely borne us out. It has completely borne us out. In fact, even at that time, the exit polls showed that nearly 19 million people who had voted for Biden in 2020 refused to vote at all in 2024. They didn't vote for Trump. They didn't vote at all because they were angry about two major things: the genocide and the cost of living crisis. And Kamala Harris and the Democratic National Committee failed to provide, and I've said this publicly, even fucking lie, say that you are supporting $15 an hour, or say that you will review the policy of genocide, say something so that you can tip the scales towards yourself and against Trump. But they were unwilling to do that. You know why? Because if they even lie about some things, that will put pressure on them once they get in office. And it goes to your point, Laila, that they would much rather have lost the election to Trump than make any semblance of promises that they could be held accountable for. And that is why they did not want to do this. And the truth is that Kamala Harris has been thoroughly discredited because of her policy. I mean, they did not even allow a Palestinian speaker at the DNC floor. I mean, none of this is being forgotten. And in fact, let's not forget the real warriors of 2024, which was the abandoned Biden movement, which then became abandoned Harris. These were Arab Americans, Muslim Americans, other Palestinian Americans who were very clear that genocide is the line that they will not cross, and any politician who supports genocide is going to earn their ire. So really, it wasn't me, it was the abandoned Biden and then abandoned Harris movement that really led the way in showing that we cannot make compromises with genocide. That's not something that you compromise with. And everything that's happened since then, we can see the tide has shifted so dramatically in terms of the mass consciousness against Israel. And if I might just add, Bernie Sanders prostrated himself. If anything, he has prostrated himself in front of the Democratic establishment. If I would fault him for anything, I would fault him for that, not because he didn't suck up to Hillary Clinton enough. And in fact, we need a fighter like me in Congress to defeat Trump and the right wing. And that is a big part of the anger that people are feeling, is the fact that they can see that the Democratic Party has refused to fight against Trump. After calling him the existential threat, what have they done to actually fight against him, to end ICE terror, all of that? And that's why, just to quote you, the Stranger newspaper, which is a very prominent newspaper in Seattle, who has endorsed my campaign, and objectively, it's the most significant endorsement in the Seattle area. Just to quote from their endorsement statement, they said, even Sawant's liberal detractors can agree she'd make life hell for congressional Republicans and the Trump administration if we send her to DC. Smith and his disastrous pro-war stances need to be removed from office before he can do any more damage to both his district and the world, wrote Sawant. So in other words, they're recognizing that actually my fighting approach is really something that is a nightmare for Trump and the right wing. The difference is that we are actually fighting Trump. We're not just saying he's a threat in order for electoral gains. We're saying that the growth of the right wing is dangerous, but the way you fight them is by recognizing that you have to fight against the Democratic Party also, and that you have to unite working class people across states in order to win victories that we all agree on. So, for example, a fight back to win free healthcare for all funded by taxing the rich, a fight back to win an arms embargo. At this point, the majority of Americans agree on this. So that's why I've pledged that if elected, I will turn my congressional inauguration into a mass rally in Washington, D.C. of 10,000 people, and immediately use my office to launch mass national campaigns to win free healthcare, taxing the rich, and to bring an arms embargo on Israel.
Well, it's wonderful because there are specific demands that you have. Sorry, Pat, I'm just going to, because my brain, specific demands that, as opposed to, the Chuck Schumers and Rosa DeLauro, whatever, who were like dancing, like, we're going to fight back, this pretend fight, which does nothing if the policies aren't also what you are fighting for, right? Like, we don't just need a fighter. I want somebody to fight for Medicare for all, against a genocide and all these wars for you, right? So the other thing I think that is just really so disgusting and dishonest about somebody like AOC, as opposed to, the people who are just like, whatever, the Goldmans and Moskowitz and Jeffries, who are just outright about what they really care about, is that she provided so much cover by lying for Kamala Harris and saying that she was, fighting tirelessly for a ceasefire. And also the thing with the breaking of the rail workers strike, which was, by the way, the first of 3 strikes that Biden broke. 3. Mr., the most working class pro-union president, was that she also provided cover and said it was what the workers wanted, which was really dishonest and such a betrayal of the working class. And if you feel like you're part of the working class, then they're being vile to you every moment that you breathe. It's not just that somebody doesn't talk to you in the cloakroom. So if she were really feeling what she should be feeling, which is they hate us. They hate us. That's why they're fine with us sending us back to work and getting repeated COVID infections and cancer and strokes and doing a genocide and allowing us to be homeless and not make a living wage. Like all of that, those are evidence of how much they hate us. So to try to get along with one of those people is so illustrative of, where her priorities really lie.
Yeah, I was just going to say that and I've said this before jokingly, but it's also very, very serious, which is that if any of these horrific entities, the of the capitalist class or their representatives, if someone like Chuck Schumer started liking me, I would have grave concerns about where I went wrong. Yeah, because if Chuck Schumer didn't hate my guts, it would mean I was failing somehow. So people like him hating my guts, I wear that as a badge of honor, because that is part of what confirms that. I mean, it's not everything. I mean, but it's part of what confirms that we are at least on the right track, which is against the capitalist class and their representatives and towards the working class. So, and you were referring to, what are you a fighter for? Everything, Laila. I was just thinking that someone like Chuck Schumer is a fighter for the billionaires and for the Zionist and genocidal agenda. It's not that these people don't have a fight in them.
Sure. Yes.
And I'm not saying you're saying that. I'm just saying that what they have is a fight for the ruling class. They have a lot of stomach for that, and they fight tooth and nail. They absolutely fight tooth and nail, and that is why the way the analysis is presented under capitalism is very crucial. Like you said, when ordinary people fight back to defend themselves, that's called terrorism. And when the Israeli state carries out absolute horrors, that's called defensive. And that is why it is unforgivable that progressives like AOC have voted for the Iron Dome, claiming that's defensive, because there is no aspect of the genocidal machinery of the Israeli state, apartheid state, that is defensive. It is all absolutely horrendous and murderous, and it needs to be stopped. In fact, the Israeli state needs to be smashed. The only way it can be done is if we have mass movements of the working class internationally, and especially in that region, in order to make that happen. And it is super crucial. And obviously, the biggest part of that puzzle, the political, the mechanism by which that could happen, is in the U.S. In other words, because the Israeli state is a creation, exists in service of global capitalism, and U.S. capitalism is the biggest part of that, the most powerful part of that. The role of the American working class is super crucial. So in all of this context, I think we have to, as you did correctly, Laila, we have to evaluate these elected representatives on the basis of what's actually called for in the moment. And so we see someone like AOC repeatedly failing the test, where I'm sure you all saw this just recently, just days ago, she said publicly that she was supporting Hakeem Jeffries unconditionally. I mean, she didn't say that, but it's obvious that she's supporting him unconditionally as speaker. If the Democrats take a majority in the House, this guy is as genocidal as they come. He literally said in a speech, Israel today, Israel tomorrow, Israel forever. This is the guy. This is the Israel forever guy. And it's not just about Israel. It refers to what you were saying, Pat, earlier, that they are in bed with billionaire entities in general. Israel is part of that. It's just become a very prominent part of everything. But it is the billionaire and the warmongering agenda that they represent. And so really the concrete questions will be posed for the DSA candidates who've been, they haven't been elected, but they are effectively elected because they're going to win the elections, but they won the Democratic primaries. Is what will they do when these actual questions come up? Because they are that's what you're going there for. I mean, going to Congress is not some vanity position, at least not for me. It will be, there'll be real questions. So what will you do on Hakeem Jeffries? What will you do when there are questions of strikes and everything, worker strikes, and there's a demand to break the strike or block the strike? And ultimately, all of this does come down to the question of the political analysis, because if your analysis ultimately is to be in quote unquote coalition with other politicians, progressive politicians, that is where everything starts crumbling. Because that if that's your goal, then that absolutely demands that you go along with some sort of agenda. Even if it's not Chuck Schumer's agenda, it will be some other agenda that provides cover to Chuck Schumer's agenda. So that's why, like AOC did, which was a really shameful thing that she did, where she went around saying that the railroad workers wanted that deal, which was, the total sellout, breaking of the strike deal. That is unforgivable. And so, yeah, I mean, we will see actual situations where we will get to decide which way things are going. And but can I say, it obviously it depends on what each individual wants chooses to do. And people who are not in Congress yet, we should not write anyone off. We should see what they're willing to do. But I will say this is ultimately not about individuals only. It is about individuals, yes, because it's a question of whether you personally, you who is sitting in this congressional position, do you sell out or not? Yes, it is about you, absolutely, because it's in your hands what you choose to do. But it brings up a larger question of, can you make the kind of change we fought for and won in Seattle? Can you make that through the Democratic Party by being a candidate in the Democratic Party? I don't think so, because ultimately, whether your starting point is as a Democratic candidate or not, fundamentally the question is not about parties. Fundamentally the question is about class interests, meaning, can you win the kind of victories I won in Seattle without going to war against the capitalist class? The answer to that is an emphatic, resounding no. Obviously not, because otherwise we would be in a different world. No, you have to go to class war back on them. And can you do that? If once that question is answered, the second question is, can you do that from inside the party of the billionaires? No, because the thing is, whether you do it, whether you're a Democrat or you're an independent like me, regardless, if you want to fight the billionaires, you will have to fight other politicians. And so if you are willing to do that as a Democrat, that's great. But then you will ultimately, the logic points towards coming out of the Democratic Party ultimately and forming a new party for the working class, which is why I don't go through the whole rigmarole of going into the Democratic Party first and not, because I understand it's a party of the billionaires. And ultimately, one of the reasons why we're fighting so hard to get into the general election past August 4th is so that we have a fighting chance to win the election, to go to Congress, because that will be a political earthquake. If we elect the first ever revolutionary socialist in Congress, it will be nothing short of a political earthquake, and it will be the biggest possible opportunity we would have won to build a new party for the working class, which is the most urgent necessity right now.
Yeah. Pat, did you have something? I know I cut you off earlier, so I wanted to give you your chance.
No, I would have to say that the time is now for it. I mean, people, even your charitable, like normie Democrat who's like supported local Democrats forever, they don't have time to wait for this stuff. And they see enough corruption, even if they think their guy isn't corrupt, that the system is not working for them. And so they're ready to support somebody outside. And if you're running as a Democrat and you're not anti-Israel, for example, well, these normie Democrats are writing these people off for the first time over one issue. But it does expand to all the other issues. It speaks to corruption. And I think normal people are getting that now for the first time in mass.
I think it's become so clear that Gaza is a testing ground. It's where they test their weapons, the AI, the genocide, and how they continue to get away with it, even though it's enormously unpopular across the whole globe. And so it is truly shameful to have somebody like AOC. The thing that worries me, I was going to say that this new influx, the Claire Valdez and Daria Lisa Chevalier and Malat, oh my God, my brain, Malat Kuras, have all said that they don't think that they would support Jeffries. But AOC said that about Nancy Pelosi being Speaker of the House. So but there is a feeling, at least for me, and maybe my perception is not correct, but that they they wear this inside of themselves in a different way, I think, from the way AOC did. But who knows what happens when you have the pressures that you will all have when you get to Congress, right? Sorry.
Well, the squad didn't even have their own coalition.
They didn't, no.
You know, they lied to the public that they were a coalition from the start. I mean, they all admitted they never had meetings together to strategize.
Bush said that, yeah. No, we don't meet to strategize. Which is why they, I think, fought so hard against force the vote or anything that might help reveal how complicit Democratic leadership was.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, none of them was really comfortable with exposing what the Democratic Party really is. That's the whole point. That's the whole point. It's, I mean, I would analyze it this way: the lowest possible bar that you can set to decide if a politician, an elected representative, has sold out or not is the votes they have taken. You know, if you don't have 100% track record of not selling out the working class just based on just the roll call, then you failed the least, if you know, the least onerous test, just your voting record. Even on that, perhaps nobody other than Rashida Tlaib maybe comes too close to it. And you know, we saw AOC having voted for the Iron Dome, for the railroad worker strike, and so on and so forth. But that is, as I said, the lowest metric you can have. But that's not enough. Even if you had that, it would not be enough,
right?
Because the way we won victories, Lila and Pat, in Seattle, is that we went on the offensive,
right?
And we were relentless about it. I mean, we have a lot of people who look at the list of victories we won and they're like, oh my God, like, how did you do all this in 10 years? Well, that's the thing. That office that we won was entirely in service of the working class. And we saw that as our never-ending responsibility to use it to the maximum to win victories for the working class. That is why my office has the distinction not only of having the nation's highest minimum wage, the Amazon tax, which nobody thought was possible, which is raising hundreds of millions of dollars every year now from taxing the wealthiest corporations, the renters' rights that you would never even believe, like a winter eviction, a moratorium on eviction of school children and public school workers during the school years, a $10 cap on late rent fees. I mean, people can't believe that we have won these things. Another law we won where the landlord, if they increase your rent by more than 10% or more, they owe you 3 months worth of rent to help you move. These are unheard of laws. And the way we won that, and not only did we win that, we also won the nation's second Indigenous Peoples Day. We stopped the celebration, grotesque celebration of Columbus Day, which is essentially a celebration of genocide of the Indigenous people. We won free abortion. We first city to win free abortion. We won the world's first and only ban on caste-based discrimination outside South Asia. I mean, it is not a coincidence that all these victories came from one lone socialist office. And the reason is that we used our office relentlessly to go on the offensive to win victories for the working class. And that is why you have hundreds of DSA electeds on the one side and none of their victories, you know, even put together compared to what we have won. Because keep in mind, when we won the minimum wage victory, not only have we taken Seattle's minimum wage to be the nation's highest at $21.30 an hour today, because we built the 15 Now campaign and had such a smashing success in Seattle, we took the 15 Now movement national, and workers in city after city and state after state were empowered by our victory, and they were able to win substantial wage increases as well. And so because of what we won here, tens of millions of workers have won substantial wage increases that have been a lifeline for them as we get pummeled with cost of living increases. And it has been 68, 70, $100 billion, probably more, worth of transfer of wealth from the bosses to the workers. That is what's possible if you have one elected office with a fighting approach. So that is why I would say that the approach we want to take to Congress is fundamentally different even than any elected representative who might even have a really good voting track record. I mean, we need that because we don't even have that practically. with a decent voting record. But my point is that we are aiming very high. We are not being modest. And when I first won my election in 2013, a lot of these political pundits came to me and said, "That's great, you won." And people I think who genuinely supported us, but they said, "But you got to be modest, Kshama. You're too brash. You're too even people might perceive as arrogant. You need to sit back and learn from the other from the Democrats on the council."
Yeah.
I rejected that advice outright because you know what? It was my personal moral and political obligation to be ambitious for the working class. And that is what we want. And that's what working people want. People want a fighter in Congress who is ambitious about the kinds of victories that can be won and who is relentless about building the movements that we need to build so that working people, millions of them, can be empowered to fight alongside us. And so when people say, well, what are the coalitions you will build? I don't use the word coalitions, but when I build mass movements, that's my coalition. That's my people. I bring my people along so that we can together fight to force concessions from the ruling class and their political representatives.
Which is why it's so inspiring and hopeful, because I think a lot of us feel like, we're done with electoral politics, even though I show up to vote because I know what they really want is for everybody to be disaffected and not even show up at all, which is why both parties make it difficult to vote in different ways. But the idea that we're going to get enough Democrats to ever affect change in any real way is, that's like living in fantasy land. And so to know that your strategy is to use the inside outside and the worker, the movement of workers and worker power and anger to fight back has been so successful is really very encouraging for all of us. I have a question because a few people in the chat, we are a very COVID cautious group here. And some people were asking if you have any policies on worker issues, going back to work, kids being sent to school. This new explosive diarrhea parasite that's going around is a parasite that was something that was used sort of to monitor and was indicative of AIDS, which is now, this explosive diarrhea thing. Last year, I don't know if you remember, but like kids were told they could come back to school even if they had diarrhea and temperatures, high temperatures, fevers, because we just needed to fill the seats. I just saw, I think it's in Germany, that the chancellor said you're not allowed to call in sick to work anymore unless you have a doctor's note right away. So it's like another sign of the eugenics policy and the genocide. Like, some of them, unfortunately, will fall by the wayside if your constitution at this moment can't handle, several COVID infections. Is there anything that is in your platform about that? Just wondering.
Well, we don't have anything explicit yet, but I'm so glad that you and your viewers are mentioning this, because we will go and study this much more carefully. And already what you've said is been extremely useful. I didn't know that about Germany, but obviously I've been reading about the diarrhea infections. They sound really, really problematic. And I think we have to be at all times guided by science. And that's part of being a Marxist, is to be unrelentingly scientific. And so absolutely, we have to do we meaning working people have to fight for policies that will protect our lives, our health, and collectively, fight back. Which is why a big part of why we won the things that we did during the height of the pandemic, including the stimulus checks, was because the ruling class was so afraid that there would be a revolt, because there was real anger, because our lives, working people's lives, had been upended. Suddenly we had to work from home. Millions of people lost their jobs. And the ones who were going to work, like grocery workers and emergency workers and people in hospitals, they were faced with dangerous conditions, and they were taking their own lives in their hands in order to serve their communities. And so suddenly there was a realization that, oh, wait a second, it's not the billionaires who are essential to society. It's us workers, little old me, grocery worker or an emergency room nurse. I am essential to society, not Jeff Bezos. And that realization is potent. It's potent because it's the kind of realization that's is capable of shedding the shackles of fear and atomization also, because a big part of that capitalism relies on is workers being atomized, feeling all miserable in our own little spaces and doom scrolling and not organizing. And so there was that moment where there was a real threat that working people would come together and get organized. There was real anger, and that's where we got some measure of justice. In Seattle, for example, grocery store workers won a $4 an hour pandemic pay bump,
right,
because they were risking their lives. So I think at all times we have to be guided by science, but in order to translate the conclusions of science in terms of what is the safest for health and for public health overall, in order to translate that into actual policies, we will need to make it a political fight. In other words, if the working class doesn't fight for a safe society, then we are not going to get it. And when I say safe, I mean, first of all, free healthcare for all. We high quality healthcare for everybody, free at the point of use everywhere you go, clinics and public clinics and everything. I also mean that if we if it is dangerous to go to work because of viruses and so on, that we win a full measure of living standards even while being safe. And for the workers who are essential and who have to go to work, making sure that their work environment is as safe as possible. But to win any of this, we will need to, what I'm trying to say is that science is a starting point, but scientific conclusions by themselves don't win us the victories that we need, that are based in science. We will need to fight for them. Same thing with climate crisis. I mean, there is no shortage of scientific conclusions about how the planet is literally burning up.
Yep.
Vast swaths of the planet have already become uninhabitable.
Right.
And so many cities, including in my home country, India, but not just there, but also in Europe, you're seeing deadly heat waves. We're seeing that in the United States as well. People are dying, I mean, literally dying, not figuratively, but literally dying in these heat waves. And the rich can stay home safe. And the people who are faced with the risks are the poorest people, the working class people. And so all of this poses a political question of the need for revolutionary movements to, first of all, win a habitable planet in the first place, and a planet that allows us to have decent standards of living, high standards of living for all of us. That's not a system that can allow billionaires and multimillionaires. You can have billionaires, or you can have a system that works for everybody. And I would much rather fight for the latter. And in my view, that's socialism. But I wanted to connect that with your earlier point, Laila, about electoral politics. I mean, I'm a revolutionary socialist. I'm a Marxist. I don't believe that we're going to elect our way out of capitalism towards into socialism. And there's no substitute for revolutionary mass movements. That has to happen. And anything that we want, even in the form of substantive changes under capitalism that we won through my city council office, that was won through social struggle. It was won through working class mass movements. And in fact, most of the big shifts in society have not come through elections per se, they have come through mass struggle.
Right.
The reason I think that a distinction between electoral politics and mass movements, like counterposing them, is misleading, which often, that's the most common understanding on the left. But the reason I think that's misleading is because for us, the question has to be, what are the avenues through which we can win the biggest possible breakthroughs for the working class? And one decisive lesson from global history has been that if we don't build a new party for the working class in the United States, we are not going to have a way forward. Because if you look at how Canada won its healthcare, if you look at how the working class in Europe won the kind of victories that we have never seen in the United States in terms of healthcare, housing, public transportation, funding for public education, all of that, the way they won was by building new working class mass parties.
Yep.
And those parties not being electoral per se. I mean, yes, they had to run candidates, because without that, you're not going to pose a challenge to the Democratic Party.
Right.
That is integral. That is one of the reasons why I reject this dichotomy, which I feel is a false dichotomy between electoral versus others. Because if you don't pose an actual challenge to the political institutions of capitalism, you have no way forward. So that has to be integral. But my point is that it was the formation of new parties which ran candidates, won elections, and started putting policies in place that were a threat to the capitalist system, and all of that empowering the working class and building the threat of revolutionary struggle. That is what it took to win any victories. That is why I think it is quite misleading to separate the two things and understand that for us, the question is, where can we get the biggest breakthroughs? And and even if at this moment we don't have a labor leadership that will actually build general strikes that we need, we don't. But even if we did, we should still be fighting for a new party, and we should be running candidates to win elections, because all of that goes hand in hand. And ultimately, we are at a moment, a sober assessment of this moment is that the labor leadership, for the most part, is in alliance with the parties of capitalism, and that is not where the breakthroughs for struggle are going to happen. That is why this election is so crucial. I am not saying this because it's my election campaign. I am saying this because it's objectively true that if we can win the election of the first ever revolutionary socialist to the US Congress, it will be nothing short of a political earthquake. And you know what? Lila and Pat, the capitalist class understands that. The Democratic Party understands that. That is why they are hoping that I will be driven out of this election in the primary itself, and I won't get to go into general election. You know, Washington State has a jungle primary, meaning everybody, regardless of party affiliation, is in the same primary. And so even though I'm running as an independent, I'm in the same primary as my main opponent, incumbent, warmongering incumbent Adam Smith. And there's another Democrat who's running in this race, and there's a Republican running in this race, and there's I think another candidate. And so what we are seeing is a situation where on the election night, August 4th, our campaign will need to be one of the top two vote getters to move to the November election. And the ruling class and the Democratic Party, they understand that if the November election in Washington State's 9th congressional district is a head-to-head match between Adam Smith and Kshama Sawant, that will be the election to watch, because we will be going, we will have a revolutionary socialist campaign going head-to-head against a general among the warmongers, and it will be electrifying. And we want that to happen. We want that November election to be that electrifying battle, and it will be the battle to watch. But in order to get there, we need to get through the August 4th primary election. And so I really appeal to all your viewers, if you want a fight back, if you are hungry for the kind of struggle that I'm talking about that we had in Seattle, then if you want that nationally, then please help us get through the finish line of the primary election. In order to be one of the top two vote getters, we need your help fundraising, phone banking. If you're in the Seattle area, we need your help physically canvassing here, because we have so many thousands upon thousands of voters that we haven't reached yet who will support our campaign, but they need to hear from us. And my campaign has been invisibilized not only by the corporate media, but also by big sections of what you would call progressive media. And that is why we need help from everybody who's watching this and who supports us.
Absolutely. Amen. And sorry, I think I misspoke, because I do vote, and I always do. And you are the avenue, I think, for change. I just meant the idea of like, we just need 3 more Democrats. And then that's sort of what I was saying. But
yes, absolutely. Yeah. No, I didn't disagree with anything that you're saying. I was just using this as an opportunity to bring up that something that's a widespread misconception on the left, that somehow elections and mass movements are counterposed. Yeah, often they are counterposed, because most people who run for election are not building movements, they're building their own careers. So yes, in that sense, it's understandable that that people think that. But my point is that if you have this type of revolutionary election campaign, then it completely changes the calculus of what we're fighting for.
Right. Absolutely.
And I think the difference is, a lot of us have fatigue from the squad and the disillusionment we've felt with the people that ran within the Democratic Party, but we wanted them to be what you're going to be. So please help Kshama she deserves to win this for us socialists.
We all deserve for Kshama to win.
Yes.
Council member, so I know everybody should go to kshamasawant.org, which is also in the description of this YouTube show right now. Where else can people find you, follow you? What any last words you would like to leave us with?
Just to echo what you were saying, Laila, earlier, that this whole fallacy of one more Democrat, that is absolutely not working. Just to recap some of the things that you were saying, the Democratic Party had the president in the White House and majorities in both houses of Congress many times, under Clinton, under Obama, and under Biden. And what did we get in return for that? We got assault after military assault. Under Clinton and Obama, we got the dismantling of the welfare state under Clinton. We got the slashing of hundreds of billions of dollars in Medicaid and Medicare under Clinton, which my opponent Adam Smith voted for. And we got as you said, the complete elimination of the possibility of any type of public health care under Obama. And under Biden, they did not even repeal Trump's tax cuts for the rich. They did not even make the ACA enhanced tax subsidies permanent. Instead, what we got was the breaking of the railroad worker strike and the genocide, which is the Holocaust of the 21st century. This strategy of putting our faith in the Democratic Party has utterly failed, and we need independent fighting politics. And I say fighting because it's not important. It's not enough to be independent in name. Bernie Sanders is technically independent, but what does he do? He's basically a cheerleader for the Democratic Party at this point. That's not the kind of independent politics I'm talking about. I'm talking about independent politics where our leaders go to war against the capitalist class and their political servants. That's the type of politics that working people are owed. And I really agree with you both. The success of our campaign and fighting to win the election, starting with getting into the November election by being one of the top 2 vote getters in the primary, we owe that to the working class.
That's right. That's right.
Here.
We are enormous fans. I'm sure you can see everybody in the chat just really feeling really enthusiastic and excited by your passion and the way you speak so clearly about what needs to happen and how to make it happen. So thank you. Thank you for joining us. We are following you. We will go to kshamasawant.org to volunteer, phone bank, donate. We need you there. We need you there. Pat,
thank you so much.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much, and thank you for taking so much time with us. We will welcome you back anytime and continue to follow your campaign. And all you pretend lefty outlets who have not had Kshama Sawant on, shame on you. This could change all of our lives. So do your part and earn your lefty badge, please. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Take care. Really a pleasure talking to you both.
Such a pleasure. Bye. I mean, I am smitten. I know we're not supposed to be smitten with our politicians, but I just adore Kshama and her approach and the clear way that she speaks. Inject that into our veins, please. All right. Do you have anything to say before? I want to thank all of our super chat people.
The only thing I have to complain about is that I didn't want to go grab another beer while she was on camera. I was like, was it going to be rude if I go off camera? And so I need to grab a beer. You do the business end. I'll be right back.
Okay. And yeah, I got the wheel up. We're going to thank you, BDA, so much for your super sticker. And thank you, Hope, for your super sticker, and NorCal Scroopy, Kshama Gets It, Revolution or Death, 4C by 2100. Yeah. And as Obama said, like, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. So if we go to 3 degrees, 3.5, I mean, he said it so cavalierly. It was really revealing and heartbreaking. But thank you. There's that socialist department. And also thank you for your other super chat and also for phone banking. That's so great. and all of your comments in here. Sorry, I didn't want to distract myself from listening to her, so I wasn't able to put all of your comments up and read them all. But thank you for all your comments. And it really does give me hope, not because just that there's a strategy that could actually happen with somebody who has used it before to such great effect. And I think she's fantastic. And yeah, we did pull the Breaking Point's response about why they haven't had her on. And I really think that it was incredibly dishonest, because the two reasons that they gave for not having Kshama on their show were, one, she's not polling high enough or doesn't have a real chance, which is ridiculous because Mamdani was polling at 1 or 2% when they had him on. And when that rebuttal was offered, the response was, but he had a new approach, which was, remember, he went out and he was interviewing former AOC voters who had voted for Trump in 2024. And, I think what's important for most people to see, because so many people have given up on electoral politics, they feel crushed by the squad and the pretend left and the DSA left, even though there's some great candidates and some people that I think we're all possibly excited about. But her strategy is different. And that is an awakening that I think a lot of people need to have, and to understand that it's not about just getting 4 more Democrats or 3 more Democrats, or, oh my gosh, it's the parliamentarian, or it's Manchin and Sinema, or whatever it is. She's not playing that game. This is a different, we had heard about the Obama to Trump voter in 2016. We understand that people are desperate, and so they want to crush the system any way they can. And that was who Trump was. But Kshama Sawant's strategy is different from the ones we normally hear. And that would be truly revolutionary for a lot of their audience to hear also. So I do hope.
Yeah, look, her strategy is correct. That's the important part, is that start there. Her strategy is correct. She has a perfect example of having succeeded in her she's a socialist success story. So anyone that's going to be progressive left, not trying to elevate, who cares what her numbers are now? You're the progressive left. She did what we want our candidates to fucking do.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Promote her.
Promote her. Exactly. It's weak sauce, as they say. Okay. Should we start with a spin, even though that upends our normal progress, or should we start with the cheers?
We should spin. We should cheers. We should do revolutionary music all night. We should have a drum circle, just a drum circle of lefty songs.
I love it. That is exactly what we need. Okay, let's spin, because I need another glass of wine. I have not even finished my first. It's 6:32. What in the hell is happening? Okay.
Second slap and pickle.
Crazy. Look at that. I manifested my own destiny.
There you go.
There we go. The wheel feels me. One second. Close. Okay. All right. Oh, were you able to fit that in, or did I mess it up because I put so many different things in there? Do you need me to? I'm going to get rid of a couple things. 1 second.
We got one pup. It's all upload another one though. But this is Tired Dog Moms.
Hi, Mama. How we doing this morning? How are the babies?
Those pups look different than that one. 'Cause that's the bitch ass mom right there.
Help.
Dior!
Oh my God.
What you going through? Why you leave your puppies?
They're looking for you. Get in the box. Luna.
get in there.
Get in here. Come on. Get in here. Feed the puppies.
Go get her. Fossey, this is your boy. Oh, so you gonna be like that? Look, he already crying.
Thunder.
Oh my God, that's a lot.
Thunder. Wow, you're not helping her. She need help.
Oh my God, that's so sad. And also, like, I feel that so hard. I didn't know that animals felt that. Isn't that crazy? I remember our older son, Asher, when he was a baby, he had colic. And from 5 at night until midnight, every night for 5 months, it was nonstop crying. It was just, and Josh and I would find each other in different parts of our very small apartment, like crying in a corner. It was like, and then the nursing and all of it. But I didn't know the animal, of course they would feel it, but I had never seen that. Oh my goodness. That's a lot.
Some people said that was making them sad. So I'm going to give us one more little bonus. This is inspiration. It's music, but it's not really, but it's words we can appreciate, I think.
That is why the man said this revolution will be telepathic.
Leftist Kid Rock.
The third world is not poor. You don't go to poor countries to make money. There are very few poor countries in this world. Most countries are rich. The Philippines are rich. Brazil is rich. Mexico is rich. Chile is rich. Only the people are poor. But there's billions to be made there, to be carved out and to be taken. There's been billions for 400 years. The capitalist European and North American powers have carved out and taken the timber, the flax, the hemp, the cocoa, the rum, the tin, the copper, the iron, the rubber, the bauxite, the slaves, and the cheap labor. They have taken out of these countries. These countries are not underdeveloped, they're overexploited.
I love that. Michael Parenti put to music. That's amazing. I love
Brilliant. That. Perfect. I love it too.
That's awesome. That's great. Hey, guess who is back? Reflect the Sun. Hello. Thank you.
Yeah,
missed you.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Absolutely. And thank you. Cheers.
Everybody's been asking about you. And I don't know if you know, but I emailed you because I got concerned. I'm always worried if we don't hear from somebody in a while. So we're happy to have you back. So happy. And thank you so much for your super chat. That's so nice. Yeah, I didn't even realize until Michael Parenti just died this year in January. I don't know why. I guess because all the videos I've seen of him are older like that. So I hadn't realized that he was.
Yeah, you think Castro times and right.
Yeah.
He's
sorry,
great. We should do our cheers.
Yes, let's do
we're rewinding it.
All right. Yeah, I know. Oh wow, and it's so late. Okay, this is I mean, another one that's not going to make anybody super happy, but just an amazing feat. This is a bookseller in Gaza who is rebuilding his library from the rubble and putting it out for his fellow Palestinians.
فما نزحت في دير البلح أنا حاولت إنه أستعيد الكتب تبعاتي أرجع على بيت لها أشوف البيت لقيت البيت والمكتبات كلهن مدمرة خالص فطلعت يعني حاولت قد المستطاع والضرب شغال في بيت لها ولحتى الآن ضرب شغال في بيت لها حاولت أرفع من الردم أظن أرفع من الردم أحصل الكتب أنا ببيع الكتاب أقصى حد من 5 شيكل ل 15 شيكل الكتاب أغلى كتاب عندي 15 شيكل من 5 شيكل ل 15 شيكل
وانا مش طمع في الفلوس، الحمد لله رب العالمين. انا بس انا عندي 10 تنفار وبعيش اولادي من طريق الكتب. انا بعيش اولادي ال10 تنفار من طريق المكتبه هذه.
That is so beautiful. I can't believe that we are still that this just continues. It's just unbelievable. It's unbearable for a day. And it's, almost 3 years and plus 80. Just unbelievable.
And it's the clearest call for action now. That's not like we can just vote a few more people in and fix this. Everybody knows you can't. You have to. We're never going to peel away from Israel because of the polls.
Right. We don't do anything because of the polls or what the people want. We're not in a democracy, so they don't care what we want. We all know we all want Medicare for all across the spectrum. We don't want data centers or AI. We don't want genocide. We don't want our money going to bombs. Like that, like you don't need to convince many more Americans. The only people who need to be convinced are the people in the halls of Congress, and we will not convince them as long as they have their donors. So, yeah.
Yep. True story.
And Sunny, thank you for putting this out. Today, July 15th, is the Global Day of Action to call for the immediate release of Dr. Hussam Abu Safia and all Palestinian healthcare workers held by Israel without charge. They are hostages, as are the journalists and the people who are being held on administrative detention. Last week, and I wish I had it with me, but I told, I think it was Susan Abulawa who had a link where you click on it and it generates like 30 different emails to representatives in the US, but also, leaders across the globe to assist in mass mailings of calling for release of him and all healthcare workers. So thank you. I mean, just one thing after another. It is so disgraceful that we are still in this place. And I guess maybe, as this is our Gatekeepers episode, did you see? Well, oh yeah, we did. We talked about this morning, but the whole interview that DropSite did with Ro Khanna was incredibly revealing. And I think Ryan Grimm came away with a very different idea than I did about what Ro Khanna was really trying to say. But if you didn't see it, it's worth watching the whole. I think it was like close to 30 minutes. But these 2 minutes of, sorry, I'm getting to it here, of Jeremy Scahill really pushing Ro Khanna on what it means to deny aid, any weapons to Israel in the face of this genocide and in their continued occupation of Palestine was some fantastic journalism. This is what we need from everybody. Yeah. Did you want to say something before I press play?
Yeah. Well, this conversation reminded me of why we need Kshama Sawant instead of squad members.
Yeah.
It really made Ro look bad, and he deserves it for this position, even though he's coming off of a very powerful moment where he tried to enter Israel and was detained by settlers. And I think that's important that he's doing that.
All sorts of gross people.
It's important.
And all that. Yeah, I agree.
But it's showing you the weakness of his argument and the weakness of the support he'll get for being a mealy-mouthed middler.
Yeah, so, absolutely. And also why it was so important on October 8th, 2023, for Norm Finkelstein to say, I do not condemn Hamas any more than I condemned Nat Turner's slave revolt or the Warsaw Ghetto uprising. And that clarity for me was, I mean, not that but it was just very helpful to hear him say it the way he said it, so I could frame my own response when people said, make excuses for why,
Israel, don't answer the question in a way that's trying to not offend the club. You're not in the club. You don't want to be in the club. That's the point.
Exactly. All right. So this is 2 minutes from this interview.
Israeli civilians are dying in these attacks because of the apartheid. Do Palestinians have a right to kill Israeli soldiers, Congressman? On October 7th, when they attacked the military bases in the Gaza envelope, did the Qassam brigades and Sarai al-Quds have a right to kill Israeli soldiers? Yes or no? On October 7th, did Palestinians have a right to attack Israeli military bases in the Gaza envelope? Yes or no?
I mean, I think October 7th attack was a terrorist attack, so I don't justify.
Was it a terrorist attack when the first targets that were hit on the morning of October 7th were multiple military bases? Did Palestinian forces have a right to attack those military bases?
I am not for violence again in any way. I mean, I am for making sure that we end the occupation.
Do they have a right to do it, Congressman? Do they have a right to attack Israeli soldiers?
No, I'm not going to say that Hamas had a right to attack Israeli soldiers or kill Israelis. Like I don't think that advances peace or advances Palestinian statehood.
Does Israel have a right to drop a single bomb on Gaza in response to October 7th?
I believe Israel had the right to get people who killed the civilians, but not in the way they went about it, which I've said is genocide.
But the Palestinians don't have a right to attack the very military bases that are running the killing operations on October 6th, 2023, or October 5th, 2023. It's a double standard. You're saying there are ways that Israel should be able to kill Palestinians, but there is never a condition under which Palestinians can attack armed, uniformed soldiers of a force that is still considered an occupying force under international law. I don't make it make sense to me.
It was great. It was truly great because he's still, first of all, it wasn't a terrorist attack. That rave wasn't supposed to be there. Number one. Number two, that was being guarded, and where they first thought they were going was to the guards of different kibbutz to attack the guards, to attack the people who are forcing them with armed, being armed by the biggest superpower in the world, keeping them in a concentration camp. So I don't know. It is so bizarre to me that anybody can still have those two views that yes, it's a genocide, but also, yes, we need to fund the Iron Dome because Israel has a right to defend itself, but Palestinians apparently don't. It was a great interview, and it really exposed Ryan Grimm a little bit, but we'll get into that, I guess. But you just can't waffle in this way, It makes Roe look like he's we're going to put this all on Netanyahu, because the settlers wouldn't be doing this. They wouldn't be stopping me, a congressman of all people, if Netanyahu wasn't in charge or something, which just makes us all think you're just a fucking Libby Dem. Yeah, if this is all just going to be pinned on Netanyahu and not the fact that, every single poll shows that between 85 and 90% of regular Israelis support the genocide, support collective punishment, support the invasion and occupation in Lebanon, right? Where is the Israeli resistance? I know there's some, it's a very small number, there are some, but nowhere near the numbers that we have here population wise, percentage wise, right?
Yeah.
There are those people.
They have to leave the country.
Palestinians. Yeah, exactly.
They have to be out of the country because they're the communist threat. They are the fear mongering you put on communism and socialism is happening in Israel. It's happening in Germany. It's happening in fucking the UK. It's happening in the US.
Yep.
Right? So Israeli citizens aren't allowed to speak up against this stuff. And they agree with it already. I'm just saying, right. But they've created a culture where you can't.
Right. Well, and also, they're so heavily propagandized to feel like they always have to be in fear and everybody hates us and everybody wants to kill us. So we have to kill them first. But yes, they get treated much the same way US people get treated when they protest genocide. And so it is, I think, also revealing that there are so few Israelis who actually have been fighting against this, even though the numbers are growing slowly. But also, you know, I think about that Sheryl, no, it's not Sheryl, Sandberg. What's her name? Sandberg, whatever.
Cheryl.
Yeah, Cheryl. Okay. Who said, "Will you hide me?" You know, and that was something that as a, you know, a young person in grade school and reading Diary of Anne Frank and people who, you know, the resistance in Holland and Germany and people who did in France, like people who did hide Jews. Where are the Israelis who are hiding or helping Palestinians to escape death? Like, where's that group of people? Where are they? Cheryl, I was seeing it with thanks to, and thank you, Macarius. I need to read her post. She can be really a phenomenal writer. Thank you. And I know we've had people request that we try to get her on the show, which we would love. We will put her on the list to come back to ask again. But yeah, to keep talking about Israel has a right to defend itself, but Palestinians don't.
Yeah. And I've seen that clip now probably 5 times. And this was the first time I watched the whole clip looking at Ryan Grimm, because he's taken a lot of heat in this, rightfully so. Largely because after the interview, he went on to sort of defend why Roe wouldn't go so far. And he was like, it's, you know, there's an argument to made for coalition building, which was kind of what he was alluding to, which is the opposite. It's the opposite of Kshama Sawant.
Exactly. And also like compared him to Lincoln. And said, well, he's like Lincoln with the abolitionists, what he really believes in his heart. But if he said it's a genocide, which he has said that, then that would mean that that the U.S. could no longer give any arms or aid to Israel because that's against our laws, right? And so that would put him in a quandary. I don't think that's it because he is calling it a genocide. So the fact is, I think that there are people who in their minds still truly believe that Hamas and Hezbollah, Ansar Allah are terrorist groups and not groups that were founded to combat an illegal occupation of an apartheid genocidal state. So as long as
my read on this with
terrorist attack, you don't get what's happening. Sorry.
My read on it with Roe is more that Grimm was trying to say, look, it's political. Like he's just trying to win the election and then he'll have a bigger voice because he can win his election kind of thing, or win the presidency, assuming, you know, like that kind of thing. Like forgive his errors because he has to play the game kind of thing. Is how, because you can see it on Ryan's face. I watched the whole interview. He's like, ooh, shit answer. How do I make up for this shit answer? And then sure enough, when the interview's over and it's just the 3 of them, he does. He has a spin on it.
Yeah, which is really disappointing. And I was really disappointed in Ro Khanna, honestly, because, you know, when he talks about, well, I'm more MLK than Malcolm, every lib loves to do this. I just believe in peaceful resistance. And Scahill pointed out, I can't even remember if that was in this clip right now because I watched whatever. Anyway, you know, that when they did the Great March of Return, which was peaceful, IDF soldiers had like contests who could shoot the most Palestinians in their knees, right? And so to talk about MLK, who, by the way, like, yes, he was a pacifist for a while, but also knew that that wasn't the only way, the only avenue. And by the way, was enormously unpopular with the whole US population, including liberals, at the time he was alive. It's only in retrospect, because this is what liberals do. They love every social movement except for the current one, and they hate every war except the current one. That's who they are.
Right. I mean, they want to pretend civil rights ended because of the, not giving up her seat on the bus. Like that was it. Right. The peaceful thing where, she wouldn't give up her seat. So that's how it ended. Yep. Not the fucking violence, which is what it took. Every single fucking victory we've ever had is violence.
Yeah, that was, I never want to hear somebody talk about how they're really more MLK than Malcolm X again and Gandhi. Like, fuck off. You have no right to tell people who are fighting for their own preservation, self-determination, and against genociders how to fight. Like, who are you? I don't know. That was really upsetting. The other thing that I have to say was there was a vote today. Wait, and I wrote this down because my brain, doesn't totally work. But there was a vote today with the Massey bill, right? And I think there were 100 Democrats who voted with Massey for this bill. It was like a procedural vote, but voted for it to be included. It wasn't included. The vote was, the bill was to prevent any aid going to Israel at all. And when Ryan Grim was talking about it, he said, well, the Massey bill won't pass. They knew it wasn't going to pass, but it is an opportunity to force people to go on record to show if they support Israel or they don't, which can be important in primaries. And I was like, wait a second. So to force the vote, to get them on record, is that what you're saying? That is an important strategy? Like, it was just, I don't know. I do feel sometimes like their strategy is to wear us all down and break my brain.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously, Brianna gets all sorts of heat for force the vote all the time because she's always bringing it up, but she's always bringing it up for a reason because it's the most illustrative piece of fucking evidence against the squad and how they haven't done anything, right?
Yeah.
But all these people like Grimm that were, against force the vote, and he'll pretend he was neutral or something, but he was against it. They're the ones that made it Jimmy Dore's plan, and that was a strategic thing to kill the plan. Like we were all screaming, "It's take him out of it." I don't give a fuck about Jimmy Dore.
Exactly.
The strategy is sound.
Exactly. No, I got private messages. Who is that Melissa woman? She was a Bernie person, but she's like, "How can you support something supported by Jimmy Dore?"
Melissa Byrne.
Is that
she was a California DNC person, but the progressive wing or something, I forget. But she started out as a real like lefty person, then centricized herself as things went on.
Like, I don't care who supports it if it's right, and I don't care. It's the other thing that Kshama said, and I got so much of this from libs before they all left me in 2020. But like, I mean, I believe in Medicare for all, but Bernie's just so angry the way he talks, and I just can't. Like, it's like, so you really believe it to your bones then, the Medicare for all and like dignity for everybody and healthcare is a human right, but you can be turned away from it so quickly because somebody is a little gruff. Like, it's just ridiculous.
So
yeah,
I looked her up because I was like, I know it's Melissa Byrne. Yeah, she was Bernie's digital chair in 2016 and ran his California campaign in 2020.
Got it. And
progressives really started to hate her after a while, which I was mutuals with her and we parted ways, but I don't know her. I can't.
Yeah. Anyway, I just, all of that, it is a way of gatekeeping. Like, you have to have some convictions. And, not the first time, but like he said on Breaking Point, and, listen, I think that Drop Site has done amazing work uncovering Israel and these wars. I really, so I don't want to completely disparage him at all. But I do think that, running cover for the squad when they were running cover for Biden, when he was crushing a strike, and Kshama Sawant, like, she called him out right there. Like, that's bullshit. It doesn't matter what a couple of workers say. You don't know, like, our job is to fight for the working class, and the workers voted for a strike. So that's what we support, right? Like, all of that kind of stuff is, I do think it probably, I sorry, because I see a few people in the chat have said it's like access. And I do think that there is part of it that is about access journalism on some level. And I even understand that a little bit. I mean, I don't excuse it, but I feel that pull when I'm like, oh, do I... Listen, even asking Kshama about COVID, because I've brought it up the last 2 times that she's been on. And I mean, even this time before, somebody asked us to say, I said something about COVID, and I didn't want her to feel like I put her on the spot. That's not how we run our interviews. We're not that kind of a show. We don't usually bring people on that we are vastly different, have vastly different agendas from. And I love her. I think she's amazing. But the way she responded is the way somebody who is a true ally responds, right? Like, thank you for mentioning that. That is important. I'm going to look more into it. Like, I really appreciate that. but I understand the hesitation, but you got to like push through it, especially if you consider yourself a journalist. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what I will say about the whole interview is that even though I disagree with Grimm's tact and whatever, it was a full discussion. So Grimm kind of reminds me of like sort of the Libby version of Breonna Joy Gray in a way. Like he's going to come at it with what the party thinks more, because I think he has more sort of Democratic Libby roots.
Yeah.
So even when he said the things that I disagreed with, it was posed as a question. I can give him a little leeway in that regard, is what I'm saying. You know, but Scahill was great. Scahill was like, look, it's not our job to make these people look good necessarily.
Right.
Like,
and I will say, you know, Ro Khanna then asked the woman who's also a journalist there what she thought about it. And unfortunately, at the time, I don't think that she had an answer prepared. Maybe she didn't think that she was going to be put on the spot like that. So it was fine, but it was a little bit rambling and not as incisive as I think her real feelings are, because I think she was trying to be polite. And then after that, and I mean, like, I have no idea because everything is so nebulous. But after that, then Ro Khanna was like, just today said, we're blocking, I want to block all weapons, both offensive and defensive for Israel. I don't know if that was in light of the conversation he had with Jeremy Scahill or what, but yeah.
I don't know. You know, I'm always so torn on Roe. One day I like him, one day I don't, you know, but my consensus on him over years of it is that he's okay. Like that's about all I got for him. Like he may be one of the best Democrats, but do I want to go work for his campaign? No.
Yeah.
Right. So
I know
we need people we are inspired to work for. And that answer just turned off your most motivated base. Anyone seeing that is going to be repulsed by your answer.
Because that's the thing. Like, he's already lost the AIPAC crowd. He's done. If you even one like inch of criticism, you're out. They're going to spend money against him no matter what. And so now he's also lost the anti-genocide crowd, right? Like, how does that help you?
You just leaned in by doing this movement at the border that drew a lot of attention for the first time in the best way. And then you just like, well, no, you just took it down. You softened it all. You made it weak. You lean into it. That's why you could win the fucking presidency. I mean, I don't think you can, but like, you're the highest profile progressive that's going to be on the debate stage that I know of at this point in 2028.
Right. So own it. Own it.
Own it.
All right. Well, let's just kind of go through our lovely party of opposition. So this was about the vote that happened today. Again, it was procedural, but House Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries told colleagues he will oppose Massey's amendment to the appropriations bill that would cut off all aid to Israel, which also is so crazy because it wasn't going to win anyway. Right? Like, even if all the Democrats had voted with Massey, it still wouldn't. So like, but you know, let's face it, he received AIPAC's largest ever earmarked contribution to his joint fundraising committee. Today, he came out against cutting billions in Israel aid. And, you know, again, what's really disgusting is I even understand why Mamdani had to support him or had to say that at the very beginning of his administration, because he needs the purse strings of Hochul, who, by the way, just decreed a moratorium on any data centers in New York State, you know, which is great. I think that is a different leveraging of power than people who are in Congress. And so for AOC to say that she's supporting him because he's going to help her with some housing offsets is just gross. But you know, they are fighting for, we keep getting Neera Tanden and all these people coming after Abdul El-Sayed, and does Israel have a right to exist? And actually, even Ro Khanna was asked about the clip that we showed last week when Abdul El-Sayed was on with was it Dana Bash about it was Casey Hunt. Does Israel have a right to exist? Which as everybody knows, is never asked about any other country. And also it already exists. And why aren't you just happy to hear Israel should exist as a democratic country with equal rights for everybody? If they're going to call themselves,
if you oppose his answer to Israel existing, you are saying it's a genocide. You are saying Palestinians are not equal people.
That's right.
And Israel has a right to treat people as second-class citizens. That's your rebuttal includes that by logical. That's how logic works.
Yeah. There is, I do think that partly it's to tame and embarrass and put on their back heel the sort of insurgent progressive left people. But I don't think it's working because, it's not working obviously for the masses who are seeing it, but also these politicians who are smart and know how to respond in a way that is just upholding values that we all are supposed to espouse here in this country, then there's nowhere to go with that, right?
Well, the best thing that could happen to his campaign is they keep asking him this question in this way and let him answer it in the way he does.
Right.
Because the public is in agreement with him on all of this.
Yeah.
So if your zinger on him is that he supports Palestinians not being fucking murdered and thinks we shouldn't fucking bomb a school of 100 plus girls in Iran to start our war for no fucking reason, well, that's where the public is. So keep asking him about that stuff.
So they know that because he has been answering it well. They know that Israel and AIPAC are wildly unpopular. So the new tactic that they're really pushing is that Abdul El-Sayed is sexist, just like Graham Plattner. He has a problem with his sexism. So this is the new ad that they're running, and they're throwing, I think they've now spent, AIPAC, $30 million in this one congressional race, which is Abdul El-Sayed versus Haley Stevens. So this is their newest ad.
Leaders of Democratic women's groups call Abdul El-Sayed's attacks on Haley Stevens sexist and the same tired playbook used against women. That's what El-Sayed does. El-Sayed called Michelle Obama's work uninspired and ineffectual. He claimed Gretchen Whitmer was bought and sold, and an employee said they were offered payment to keep silent after witnessing El-Sayed disparaging women. Let's reject Abdul El-Sayed's sexist attacks. UDP's responsible for the content of this ad.
So they're going with that. And then we've also got Shannon Watts and the head of Emily's List also harping on Abdul El-Sayed being just so sexist.
I know you all have endorsed Haley Stevens in Michigan.
Yeah.
And I'm getting so much grief over that. Again, I think it's a great example of a show horse versus a workhorse.
Yeah.
It's not easy to stand up as a woman for other women, especially online. Like, the blowback is swift and furious. And that's obviously sexism. Like, how do we do this online? Push back on these narratives that aren't true about who we are and what we should advocate for, and in real life. Like, how do we make this shift when women only hold 25% of the 500,000 elected positions in this country?
Like, every time we can demonstrate that a woman can win in a place that someone told us that we couldn't, we are carrying that forward. But I also think, it's why, even though anytime you say even just a simple positive thing in some of these races, you could end up being eviscerated online for it, that we keep showing up and doing it, right? And
Yes.
we need to keep showing up and doing it, because that is so critically important to our ability to push past this. Otherwise, we're just handing it over to them, right? We're kind of like, here's the cesspool of the manosphere and you can take it. We have to be willing to stand up and say, no, these attacks on Haley Stevens are sexist, and we're not going to let that stand, even when it is really painful. And then, you carrying that over to these lessons that we're seeing in Maine, all of those months of people eviscerating us for kind of speaking the truth about who this man was. And today we're living those very real consequences.
Just off. Look who I have here.
Oh, hello.
Lucky. No.
Aw, Strike. No, Strike. Jesus, that's my cat. I'm losing it.
Josh just brought me a little something to eat.
That is a great.
She's right here. Okay.
Great feeding. Okay, Emily's list, though, just so you know, that's a PAC. It's a fucking centrist operation, right? The idea is to fund, anti-abortion stuff, like, people to fight for abortion rights. That's the whole purpose of the PAC
in Congress.
As stated, right?
It doesn't even matter, like who they're. Yeah.
But yeah, they pivoted from Saeed being anti-Semitic, and they're like, oh wait, people do want someone anti-Israel, so sticking him with anti-Semitism in the face of all these false anti-Semitism charges, nobody's buying it. So now he's sexist. Now we get the big organizations, and that whole ad was like big leaders from all these groups, and it's like it's her because she's the fucking Democratic operative PAC.
Yep, exactly.
That's it. And then there was an anonymous person said they were given money to not file a charge, okay, that's an anonymous person that might maybe that who, what? I mean, that's like nothing.
You can just put
that's
out
like
anything to smear somebody. Yeah.
And the courts have decided it's perfectly legal to fabricate whatever the fuck you want for a political ad. So like none of that has to be having even a drop of truth to be defensible, because it's a political ad, which is seen as like above being honest by our courts.
It's so gross. And Haley Stevens has now been running ads that make it seem as if Obama has endorsed her. And so what's been happening is, because Obama is still the most, like, Bernie's the most popular sitting politician, Obama is the most popular politician. And he still has, a huge hold on Democrats, and especially older Black Democrats in Michigan. And so to have an ad, and she was the chair of his auto worker bailout for auto worker fund or whatever that Obama did when he came into office.
Yeah.
And so now they're running something from almost 20 years ago of him saying how great she was, but implying in that ad that he's supporting her now. And I have seen that the polling right now is is actually giving her quite a bit more leverage. And these dishonest ads, it really is so unfortunate. One, that we have money in politics, and two, that you're allowed to lie in your ads, because this is who they're voting.
I am going to be working on our behalf. I am going to be telling the stories on our behalf. And you better believe I'm going to be doing it with a little bit of joy, a little bit of enthusiasm, a little bit of energy, and a little bit of stick it to them. Because that's the Michigan way.
So heavily funded by AIPAC, dreams of Israel in her sleep, and also just like a mess of a person. And now, okay, there are two things that are making me a little nervous for Abdul El-Sayed that I wish he would rectify. One is, I think he should stop calling himself a physician, because I think that you have to have be a registered, pass your medical boards in your state to practice, and that's the thing that makes you a physician, as opposed to a doctorate of a doctor of medicine. There's a difference, right? And even though I don't care, and he obviously went to med school, he passed, he was the head of the Michigan State health department, but they're going to hang him up on that word, the choice of that word, and also that he still hasn't released his tax returns. I just feel
he put out his taxes. He put out a brief of his taxes.
Okay.
Which showed that he had 1.4 or 1.7, I don't know, but it was under $2 million of personal net worth.
Got it.
So that was nothing, but that was enough for Stevens to say, why did you just put out this thing? Why don't you put out the full thing? I don't remember her email or tweet exactly.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Like, who cares if you've got 1.7 million? First of all, right now in our world, yes, it's a ton of money, but like, I think we all prefer to have somebody who is a class traitor. Like, what is the problem with somebody who does have some money, but still is fighting for the working class? Like, I will never understand why that's the problem.
I don't know. I'm just putting my strategist cap on, and I'm like, let them take this tack that he's some rich guy. I don't know. It's just like, okay, so don't pivot to your next argument. Like, if this is what you got, let's stay in that lane that I'm some rich guy.
Right.
You know, like, I don't know. Maybe there's some strategy to it, but I'm not defending him on.
No, I know. I just
whatever,
wish there were
but
nothing that they could, like, because the sexist stuff to me it's falling so flat. Obviously, all the AIPAC stuff is a feather in his cap, actually. So, like, I just wish that he weren't teeing up anything for them. But I guess then that's me sort of like giving them any space, because the truth is they'd find something no matter what, right?
Kind of. And maybe it makes sense to stay there, because then you're not even defending the stupid sexist stuff, because the sexist stuff is garbage. But like,
right.
You know, I don't know. I'm not sure. Either way, I mean, if he just sticks to his guns, doesn't pivot on policy, he's going to take some hit from the millions and millions of dollars being spent on him. But a lot of that money is being spent on him to tie him to fucking Palestine. And that's where we want to be. Like, so that's positive. So, and if you're trying to Platner him like he's Platner based on his history, people are too savvy now for that shit. It's not going to work. I mean,
that's right. I think that's right. But I'm concerned about the fake Obama endorsement, because that does seem to be taking hold a bit as we're closing in on you know, the primary. Okay.
Well, that one's tricky because he can't come out against it, because then Obama could come out and endorse her, and then it's like, look at the pivot, and that's a whole national story for fucking 2 weeks straight before the voting.
Exactly. Yeah, it's really crafty and dishonest of her campaign to do that. Okay, this was the interview that I do think is interesting. It's Brad Lander talking to Dana Bash. We tried to show it on Sunday, but it was really low volume. We fixed it. But I think it's interesting because I think, you know, Brad Lander is Jewish. He calls this a genocide, but he still is a liberal Zionist. And to me, that puts him in a certain category that, to me, that logic is untenable. But to watch him with Dana Bash, she can't even understand that he can call this a genocide. And so I think it's important sometimes, as I'm like so dismissive of anybody who doesn't have the clarity, to see what some of these people are up against, but also to know that the liberal Zionists have such squishy positions that I really don't trust them entirely. But take a look at this interview.
One of the big reasons you won your primary here is that you separated yourself from the incumbent Democrat Dan Goldman on Israel. You use the term genocide. He does not. You don't want to have the U.S. funding Israel militarily. You call yourself a liberal Zionist. What is a liberal Zionist?
I believe in the vision of a Jewish and democratic Israel. I care about the place, but I don't think it's possible for it to be democratic while it's occupying the West Bank and Gaza. And I don't think that Israel's conduct in Gaza, which I do consider a genocide, is consistent with Jewish values. So to me, it's like you stand up and you call it as you see it. I don't want to keep sending U.S. military aid to Israel while it's violating international law and Palestinian human rights. But I want it to actually honor international law and Palestinian human rights so it can be the Jewish and democratic Israel that I grew up believing in.
I'm sorry, I just want to make sure I understand. You said that you don't think it's a democratic Israel?
I want it to be a Jewish and democratic Israel. Right now, I don't think it's modeling democracy while it occupies the West Bank and Gaza and half the people under its sovereignty can't vote. But I believe that when occupation ends, then it can be Jewish and democratic, and that's what I am going to be I'm fighting for.
Why are you not just a Zionist? Why do you say liberal Zionist? What do you think the difference is?
I mean, the Declaration of Independence that founded Israel says it would be a place for the ingathering of exiles and full civil and political rights for everyone living there. But Palestinians living in the West Bank facing settler terrorism, or living in refugee camps in Gaza because their schools and hospitals were destroyed, they don't have full political and civil rights. So it is not living up to its founding vision. And to me, believing in Jewish and democratic means you got to fight for the human rights of Palestinians at the same time as you fight for the safety of Jews. I guess maybe a shorthand way of saying it is, I don't think Israelis will be safe until Palestinians are free, and they both need that.
Can I just ask you point blank? Do you not call yourself a Zionist because it is a term that many people on the hard left have started to use as a slur against Jews?
Well, no, I mean, a liberal Zionist is a Zionist. I just want to make clear I'm not a Zionist like Ben-Gvir or Smotrich who want to eliminate Palestinians. So that's why I say it.
You can be an American and not believe in what Donald Trump believes in.
To me, that's what I am here. I believe in the vision of a Jewish and democratic Israel, but it's got to change if it's going to be that.
I mean, it is like having a half-pregnant person. And on some level, she's correct. On some level, she's correct. Because the truth is, liberal Zionism is what brings you, in the end, to a genocide and an apartheid state. Just like being a Democrat is still a capitalist. It's one of the two capitalist parties in our system. So it's always going to bring you to some form of fascism, right? Like, so being a liberal Zionist is sort of like trying to have it both ways. How do you have a Jewish state that is a democracy for the people who live inside those borders who aren't Jewish?
Yeah, his own answer gives it away, really. I mean, because he's like, basically he's saying, well, if you just treated the people that we're going to keep in prisons better, like, okay, he wants a two-state solution, but that's not going to happen. So like, but even if you have two states, that means one state is still going to treat everyone else in their society differently.
That's right.
So how does that jive with progressive politics? Like, it's just, there's no good answer in
ideology,
either of them. But even his middling ground is untenable to her, which is what this illustrates the most.
Yeah, it was amazing to see. Like, it was nauseating for her. Like, she actually sort of like flinched. You could just feel like, you want to talk about Palestinian rights? Why? Like, what are there, 8 million Palestinians between the river and the sea, and they don't get to vote? They don't have any say in their existence, and they are completely dominated by Israelis. So like, why, like, how is that not something as a journalist that she has no idea about? I don't know.
No. Is it because the word Zionism is unpopular? Is that it? Well, maybe Zionists are unpopular, not the word. Maybe it's not the word. Maybe it's the genocide. Maybe.
Yeah, they keep trying to make there was an interview. I didn't pull it because, like, who the hell cares, honestly, on some level. But that actor, Jewish guy who was in,
I know who you're talking about, the 3 things that he pointed out that were anti-Semitist cases, the big old, let me give you 3 point blank cases of anti-Semitism in Hollywood.
And one was like, you can't say that you've been to Israel. You can't wear a Jewish star on a TV show and like somebody mispronounced his name or something. I don't know. It just keeps making me think of that Subway Takes thing where the
guy from White Stripes.
Yeah, the White Stripes guy who I keep forgetting, or keep like, the son of Casablanca, who's part of the Epstein files and the head of that modeling agency. But anyway, that's not his fault. You know, your father's sins and all that. But saying that Jews in the United States in 2026 have all the privilege of being white Americans, but pretend that they're like still in
the most suppressed.
The civil rights struggle, like they are Black people in a civil rights struggle. Like, it's just, you're not oppressed as a Jew in Hollywood, unless you are an anti-genocide, anti-Zionist Jew.
But the wild thing about that interview is like you could take each one of his claims. He claimed, and this was this a Jewish forum? It was a Zionist forum of some sort.
It felt like 92nd Street Y. Yeah. Yeah. It was actually, we have another clip of Chuck Todd, another journalist, at the same, I think it was like some convention. But okay, go ahead, and then we can play that one also, because these people should not be considered journalists.
Well, but the first case he brought up was that someone's agent said before they gave an interview to the person to not ask about the trips to Israel. So it was his own agent interjecting that it would look bad on them if they, talked about that, because then they'd get painted as a Zionist. But that's not society treating you away. That's your agent, managing your campaign. I mean, I don't know. It's just wild. Like all three of their cases were garbage, and they're not oppression. Meanwhile, I can go down the block, and if I have a camera on a street, I can point out actual racism happening every day to real people that is harmful and dangerous. Yeah. Versus this shit.
Yeah. It was really very embarrassing. I think this is at the same conference, convention, whatever. This is Chuck Todd about how they're coming for the Jews.
If you have a foundation, right? My kids have a foundation. They went to Hebrew school. And so when they see this, they know it's wrong. But my son is finishing up his freshman year at a university down in Texas. He's like, he goes, it's the light. I am reminded every day that I'm Jewish. And he's proud to be Jewish. Don't get me wrong. But he goes, I'm reminded every day by people that I think are my friends. It is part of the language of young men right now. An old friend of mine and I both discussed this, and we were like, we thought the experiences that my mother would share about anti-Semitism that she felt in the 50s, and he would talk about his mom, and we'd sit there and going, what were they talking about? This was, 2005, 2006, 2007. I mean, there is a life before social media, life after social media. And I know that we consider, it's like, well, I sit here and I believe this. Boy, if we taught World War I better, maybe people would understand the history of the Jews better. But ultimately, it's this goddamn technology, is it not? Social media showed up, and all of a sudden, everybody came for the Jews. And, I say, if I hear the word populism, I don't care if it's coming from the left or the right. I know what's coming next. They're coming for the Jews.
Journalists. Social media showed up and exposed the truth. That's crazy. Meanwhile, today, a Muslim man in Utah, I think, was stabbed 15 times in public in a mall. And the guy was like, what's your religion? Who do you pray to? And starts stabbing him.
Yeah. And all of this, and the lack of the left being staunchly pro-person, pro-humanity, pro-Palestine, lets the right and these Israel Zionist lunatics in our society tell the worst people in the world it's okay to be racist against brown people, against Islam. There's a difference between a Christian and an Islamicist, or what?
Right.
That's how crazy shit happens. That's how violence happens against these people. That's how when you say communism is coming and all those commies are doing shit that's bad and all that rhetoric shit, it's you're the one fueling violence against good people.
Yep.
And it's not the Jewish people. The people attacking Jewish people, some of them might have had some started with anti-Semitic bullshit, which is fueled by the right largely anyway. But if their anti-Semitism goes up, it's because there's justified hatred of the war that gets taken and mutated into anti-Jewish shit.
Because it's being perpetrated by a country that insists on calling itself the Jewish state, and it's being done to preserve safety of Jews. And if you say that you are an anti-Semitic Jew, an anti-Zionist Jew, then you're told you're not a real Jew. So like, it's difficult to ask people to separate it out when the country perpetrating it and the IDF soldiers perpetrating it are wearing Stars of David. They have patches of like the map of Greater Israel on their patches. So, Vendeo, thank you. Of course, Israel isn't a democracy. Yahoo's been prime minister for 30 years. I will thank you for your super chat. I will say, though, that does actually feel like it's representative, because as I think David, or I can't remember now, I'm so sorry, was pointing out earlier, Ben Gvir is likely going to be replacing Netanyahu, and he's even further to the right and more pro-genocide. So like this does feel representative of their the will of the people there, unfortunately. And also, I just want to say it was Mark Feuerstein, and it was at a different thing. Mark Feuerstein was at the 92nd degree, 92nd, 90.
That's not where the interview
2nd
happened.
Street Y, and Chuck Todd was at USC at the Shoah Foundation. Sorry.
Gotcha. Yeah, but imagine what it's going to be like when all the Democrats run on, well, it's just Netanyahu's the problem, and then Ben Gvir becomes the president there.
Yeah.
So they're already setting themselves up to have the public not buy the bullshit they spewed, which we don't now, but like, there's going to come a point when it's not Netanyahu and it's Ben fucking Gvir, who they're all on record, not all, but a lot of smart Democrats who are shit lib Zionists, or at least doing it politically, have been able to say Ben Gvir bad, Netanyahu bad, but like when you get rid of Netanyahu and you put in the whole war on him, and then the guy who's bad replaces him, who you said was bad, like, how's that going to play?
They're going to have to figure out another story to tell everybody. Okay, we didn't get to so much stuff, but we will tomorrow. I'm so thrilled that Kshama Sawant stayed with us for such a long time. Should we show a really quick Lego?
Oh,
right.
If we don't do a Lego, we're going to lose followers.
The people will revolt. We'll talk about this more tomorrow, but obviously the whole thing in Iran, the MOU is over. Trump is a raving lunatic. He keeps threatening like total annihilation and attacks of their infrastructure and everything. And now what's happened is Ansar Allah from Yemen, otherwise known in the US, I guess, as Houthis, are now blocking the Red Sea, which means that if Trump thought that his numbers were in the gutter before and our oil, like strategic petroleum reserves, were in the gutter as our fertilizer and economic catastrophe was coming, this is going to speed that up even more. So it's even more of a loss. But anyway, here is Red Sea Red Line by Persia Boy.
Sana struck. Runway smoke. Yemen answered. Hey! 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 Red Sea, red line, red line, red line. Hits and now the border lights shine. Our alarms in the middle of the night. Yemen answered. Red Sea, red line. Red Sea, red line. Ships take note. Bab al-Mandeb got the trade by the throat. Hormuz east, Yemen west. Two sea gates put the market to test. They hit the one-way block. That plane thought 4 years calm meant Yemen was tame. One strike landed, the truce went thin. Then missiles and drones came right in the wind. Abba alarms, red lights flashed. Years of quiet cracked up fast. You call it control, they call it a chain. Close Yemen sky, then answer the flame. Tankers turn when the warnings rise. Insurance jumps and the futures climb. Two narrow gates, one global chain. One more strike and the markets feel pain. Yemen got bombed, but Yemen still stands. You don't own the sea, you don't own the sand. Bomb the runway, threaten the land, and watch the Red Sea take command. border lights shine. Up alarms in the middle of the night. Yemen answered, Red Sea, red line. Red Sea, red line, ships take note. Bab al-Mandeb got the trade by the throat. Hormuz east, Yemen west. 2 sea gates put the market to test. Sacred defense. Yemen answered, Red Sea, red line. 2 gates, 1 price. Sacred defense.
He's quick. He's quick. I've written several times to try to get him on our show. If anybody wants to help us get that punch up pod bump for Persia Boy.
Let's go, Persia Boy.
You could use your voices. All right. Huge, enormous thank you again to Kshama Sawant. I am so hopeful that she and her strategy and movement politics can be our future, our near future.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can I just say, I would, it's going to be a long time before I say to donate to any politician. But I would say in her case, like she has a track record. She proved it. She did it. She's a socialist. She's not a Democrat. Yeah. Every ounce of her giving them hell, win or lose, although she's going to win, but win or lose is doing us a service on the outside of the electoral system. So, you know, I support anyone donating if you have the means.
Yeah, donating or making calls, canvassing, anything. It's all super important. So it looks like World Cup is down to Spain, which I'm going to call the good guys, versus Argentina.
It's clear cut. Let's go Spain. Spain has supported the Palestinians through and through. Amazing. Their top guy held up a flag and got a lot of shit, and Israel tried to get him kicked out of FIFA for it. And like, they're the good guys here, clear and day. And
yeah, absolutely.
Argentina is not.
And so we're going out on just a cool choice that they made, which was the team for the World Cup chose to have an Iranian chef as their chef while they are here participating in the World Cup, which to me just feels like the best parts of what the World Cup pretends to be, but it is for so many regular people, of just seeing cultures come together and get to know each other and share their love of a sport and each other. So cheers to all of you. We love you guys. We will be back tomorrow, 6 o'clock, new time, 6 o'clock Pacific, 9 Eastern. Keep punching up.
See you tomorrow.